living every day in your head for free. You can tap away, but I will not hear you scream. You can break your keys, spread your toxicity, your world outside reality. In your room, a little hideaway, but you let it through. Enough to go insane, living in the dark hasn't treated you well. You're building your own prison cell.
What's up, Internet? I'm Aries Van Dam, your middle-aged aura boss, your Gen X genius, your salt and pepper savant. The shaman of logic is back again for another debate, right? Before we get into the debate today, I just have a couple of notes I need to address here. Let me turn the music down a little bit more. So I saw that Sam Tripoli subscribed to my channel the other day. I am so excited. I am so excited. I'm a big fan of his. Oh, that was the first big guy I got, big star that I got that subscribed to me. It's amazing. I'm so excited. So big thanks to Sam Tripoli. And I did look, that is his channel. Like I went and checked out the video. That's the video I'm subscribed to. So really excited about that. And then someone wants some sad news. Let me read this one because it's quite a bit. I wrote a little bit on this one. Let me turn the music off because this is not a fun thing. Whatever. All right. Gabriella Saldana, a 24-year-old girl who was arrested and charged with a felony for saying, "Netanyahu, if you can hear me, drop some bonbons for us capstone students." And the state of Florida interpreted that to be a threat to the Israeli prime minister and arrested her for felonies. She's in prison right now in Florida for criticizing a foreign government, right? I know a lot of y'all don't really understand this because some of y'all just watch Fox News. This is very serious, and this is something you're not going to hear on Fox News. They're not going to tell you that because they are Zionists and they want that. So they're not going to tell you the news they don't want changed. That's the issue. That's the propaganda I'm talking about. We're getting Americans arrested for exercising their First Amendment right to criticize another nation. They're going to jail for felonies now in America, right? We laugh at England because they go to jail for a joke. That's what she did. She went to jail for a joke about Netanyahu in a group chat with like 15 other little girls from a college campus. That's where we're at now. That's where we're at, that you can't criticize Israel or you go to jail in America. I'm going to let that sink in for a little bit. And you can go look that up. That's her name, Gabriella Saldana. And I want to also remind y'all that Tom Alexandrovich is still free because he worked for Israel whenever he came here to diddle children. That's where we're at. You can come to America and diddle children if you like and just go home scot-free, but you can't criticize the country that allows that and has a relationship with America that makes that possible, right? That's where we're at. Yeah, we're in 1984, boys. Trust me, we're in 1984. But today's video is not going to really be about that. I had some AI issues this morning and couldn't get a thumbnail for the other video that I had planned. Look for that one on Friday. It's going to be a short one, though. This one is going to be a little bit longer. This is a 2-hour debate. We're probably going to do most of it. I'm going to try and get through the whole thing. So we need to kind of get into it. But say hi to my co-host. He gets mad when I forget to show him. So subscribe so this little fuck doesn't have to eat dog food. He really hates dog food. He likes bacon. Look. He loves bacon. Well, he's not going to move to eat it. Like, it's got to crawl in his mouth, of course. He's very lazy. I think he learned that from me. But let's get to the debate because we don't have a lot of time. I got things I got to go do today. So let me get to it.
Can national identity survive open immigration?
I guess I'll kind of take the reins on this. I feel like when I hear people talk about things related to open borders, mass migration, or national identity, there's kind of two questions that always pop up in my mind, and I never hear people actually kind of tack down what they mean when they say these things. So the first thing is, for national identity, I don't know as much about the various identities that exist in the UK, but I know for the United States, to try to find an overlap between identity from a gay guy in San Francisco versus like a farmer in Iowa or something. There's not many commonalities there to speak of when you talk about national identity, especially when I'm thinking of it in the context of what type of immigrant would threaten that whatever unified identity, whatever those two things are. So I'm kind of curious, I guess, when I think about national identity, when I think about it being threatened by people, my first question is, what is the national identity that we're trying to protect for the United States or for the United Kingdom? And then when we talk about like migration or mass migration, what do we mean exactly when we say that?
Well, okay. So there's two questions there. What is national identity and what is immigration? Why don't we start in reverse and talk about immigration? Take Britain as an example, right? So I've lived in this country. I came to Britain it was just about Russia. Prior to that, it was the Soviet Union in 1996. So let's go back to 1991, because that's the data when we have the census. 1991. What has happened in the last 35 years? So in the last 35 years ago, this country had a population of 58 million people. Today, the population is 70 million. Almost all of that is due to mass immigration. So the population of Britain, the immigrant population of Britain, that's first generation, people who've arrived, went from 4 million to 12 million in the space of 35 years, right? It trebled in 35 years. Now, you might say, well, you know, is that a lot? Is that a little? Who knows? That is more people, in the last 35 years, more people came to Britain than came to Britain in the previous 2 millennia. So more people in 35 years than had come in 2,000 years. Now,
And that includes Vikings.
seems like quite a lot, right? Now, we'll talk about some more facts about this, and then we can talk about national identity. I'm going to take a little time, if you don't mind, just to lay this out.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of poke around as you answer.
Yeah, but hold on. Let me just let's talk about what we mean by immigration, right?
Okay. Well, then also the mass, because I hear a lot of these words will be like, it was a lot of people.
Well, hold on.
I was like, what does that mean? Yeah.
I'm explaining it. So
Okay.
more people in 35 years than 2,000 years, that sounds like quite a lot of people. Is
Not
that fair?
necessarily, no.
Is that fair?
No, not really, right? In
Not
the context,
really.
like if I were to ask for like the total growth of wealth compared to like the last like 50 years might also dwarf the last 2,000 years, or the total amount of carbon pollution, or the total amount of TV episodes or plays written or songs written. Like, I don't know if I would just arbitrarily say, I'm going to look at immigration and I'm going to measure it past some 1,000-year thing or whatever.
You don't think that
You would acknowledge that it's a lot more, though, right? It's definitely going up. It's trending up. Did you not notice that, Destiny?
more people coming into a country in 35 years than had come in the previous 2,000 years is quite a lot?
I just think that statement is like vacuous and meaningless. When we say quite a lot, what like should it have been less? Like what kind of immigrants
Yeah.
shouldn't have come? What does that mean?
You're making it into a moral conversation. I'm talking about purely numbers. You might think it's a great thing, right? Like,
Well, to be clear, I'm not talking. Just to be clear, I'm not
Just-
talking
you
moral.
Keep interrupting.
You said a lot, yeah.
You keep interrupting. So,
Okay.
if we're talking about quite a lot, you keep trying to make it a moral thing.
I'm not making it a moral thing.
Forgive him. Adderall makes you do that.
If we're going to have a conversation, you're going to have to let me finish a sentence at least.
We'll just don't misquote my position.
Okay,
yeah.
so just calm down for a bit.
I'm super calm.
I know you've got your Red Bull. Just have
I
some
have my
water,
Red Bull.
chill
I'm
out.
still super calm.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very
Now-
simple question. Yeah.
If more people, if you're making a moral issue, it becomes very clouded and complicated. Let's just talk about what we're talking about in terms of pure numbers, right? If more people have come into a country in 35 years than have come in 2,000 years, that is objectively a lot. Now, you might think it's a good thing. Like, I like ice cream, and if I eat a tub of ice cream, I'm not going to say that's not a lot of ice cream. I still like it, but it's a lot of ice cream, right? We'd accept that. It's more, a scoop is not a lot of ice cream, a tub is a lot of ice cream. So more people coming into a country in 35 years than had come in 2,000 years is objectively a lot of people, okay?
Just to be clear, when you say a lot, that's a normative value that's with respect to some kind of norm or mean. When you
No.
say a lot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
compared to before.
Yeah,
Compared
that's
to the entire
objectively,
span
yeah,
of the
that is
history of this country.
objectively true. It's just kind of a meaningless
Well, thank
statement.
you.
Like
So you've
everything is
accepted-
a lot
you've
more
accepted
than the
that
past
what I'm saying
2
is
millennia.
objectively
Yeah.
true. I'm great.
If you didn't have sex for 6 years and then you got laid twice in a weekend, that would be a lot, right? That's a lot. It's because it's more than you are used to, more than you are used to dealing with. It's a new thing. That's what he's trying to say, and Destiny's trying to fight him on it for some reason.
Correct. Yes, that's
So-
a meaningless statement, but yes.
Now that we've got there, what does it mean? Well, first of all, think about it like this. And again, it's not about whether you like it or not, whether you think it's a good thing or not, or a bad thing. The three biggest cities in this country, in the last 30 years, have ceased to be majority inhabited by the people who are native to this land. That's just a fact. And I am one of the people who's come here in that time. So I'm not saying it's only a terrible thing, but it's an objective fact. The three biggest cities in the country are now majority minority. London, and this has happened very quickly. London was 80% white British in 1991. It is probably around 30% white British today. So if you have seen that level of change in the city in which you live, think about this as well. 3/4 of the people who live in this country today are over the age of 35. So all of this has happened within the lifetime of one generation, effectively. That is a level of change that is A, completely unprecedented, B, extremely transformative, whether you like it or not, good or bad, whatever you may think. You might think, oh, you know, the amount of different kinds of food has got better. It's true, objectively. But it's also true, objectively, that entire swathes of this city are no longer inhabited by the people who used to live here. Again, this is an objective fact. You can like it, you can dislike it.
The reason Destiny's having some issues letting that compute with his brain is because he's been trained to not notice it. Like, they just act like they don't notice a person that's black. They don't notice a person that's of a foreign descent or whatever. So I'm sure in reality, most of us, if we lived in a 30% black neighborhood and then like over like a 6-month period, now it's 80% black, I think you would notice that. You would notice that quite a bit. He's just pretending like he doesn't, because that's part of the woke ideology where they have to teach you. You don't see color. You don't see this. Yeah, okay. But you don't notice that there's no more fucking burger joints. It's all like Hamas food now. Like, what the fuck? You will notice that.
But that is something that has happened. This is true of London, it's true of Manchester, it's true of Birmingham, and it's true of several other smaller cities in this country. By 2060, according to current projections, white British people will become a minority in this country. 2060 is the next 35 years, right? And that's the entire kind of demographic transformation. These are facts. Forget about people's opinions, my opinion, your opinion. In terms of illegal immigration, there are now almost 1 million. We don't know exactly because it's hard to measure, but we have almost 1 million illegal immigrants in Britain today, which for a population of 70 million is quite a lot. We currently spend £14 million a day. I'm not talking about the cost to the taxpayer of having 1 million illegal immigrants here. I'm talking about how much we spend to accommodate them and all other things. Now, 14 million, is that a lot per day? It's quite a lot. But also this is happening at an unprecedented rate. More people come to Britain illegally today than came legally when I came here in 1996. I'll say that again. More people come here illegally every year than came here in 1996 when I came here. That's the level of change when it comes to illegal immigration. And the cost of it, £14 million a day, is increased by a factor of 10 in the last 10 years alone. So it's 1,000% more than what it was. Those are the facts about immigration. So when we talk about immigration and whether it's compatible with national identity, it depends what we mean. If we're talking about 20, 30, 40,000 people a year, highly selective from compatible cultures as it used to be, perfectly compatible, and in fact, I think probably quite desirable. If we're talking about what we've seen over the last 30 years, I don't think it's compatible with any sort of national identity at all. Now, I've been talking for a long time, so we can get to national identity after you've addressed that.
Sure. So I guess the thing that is a little bit strange to me about the immigration question is that sometimes I'll hear a bunch of descriptions laid out, and I don't know exactly what I'm supposed to do with them. There's oftentimes a lack of a prescriptive statement. It seems like there's a little bit of fear of committing to any particular idea about what an ideal immigrant would look like. And then it feels like we're sometimes also lumping a ton of immigrants together. So for instance, when we say there have been so many more immigrants that have come here in the past 30, 35 years, but then we also mention like illegal immigrants or asylum seekers, these are all different groups of people. So I don't know why. I
separated them out. I talked about legal immigration and illegal immigration, right?
I understand, but so the prompt, it has to do with basically can a country's culture, whatever, survive mass migration? Illegal immigrants are not mass migrating here. The mass migration.
They are. So I just told you more illegal immigrants come here every year now than legal immigrants came here 30 years ago.
I understand that, but if you look at
they are mass migrating.
So then are the legal ones mass migrating, or what? Is it just...
The legal immigrants are also mass migrating. It's possible for them both to be mass migrating.
But it's like 10 to 1, right? So comparing the two, it seems like we're talking about different kinds of... We're probably talking about different kinds of immigrants. When we talk about legal versus illegal,
The problem with this, it just feels like a dad lecturing his dumb kid. That's what it feels like. Every time I see Destiny debate, that's why I don't like doing Destiny debates for that very reason. It's like an adult lecturing a child. That's what a debate with him is. Maybe a child who's in maybe like a couple of honors classes. Like he's not really as dumb as most kids, but he's like a little bit smarter, but he's still a child. He's still a child.
We're talking about both, yeah.
Well, no,
I'm talking about both.
you don't see any difference between a legal immigrant versus an illegal immigrant?
Well, of course I do.
Okay.
But they are both mass migrating here. They're both coming here in unprecedented numbers.
Everything definitionally is unprecedented as you move forward in years. We have an unprecedented amount of technology, an unprecedented amount of energy generation, an unprecedented amount of
I think you might be confused about the meaning of the word unprecedented.
Unprecedented as in it hasn't happened at that level before. Yeah.
Right. So if we have immigration of 20,000 people a year, that wouldn't be unprecedented because we had that before.
Yeah, but the population is growing of the country, the population of the rest of the planet is growing, the economy is growing, there's a whole bunch of other factors at play. It's not like all else equal, there's just 10 million people that have shown up. Like there's other factors at play at all points in time as well. So
Yes,
it's a bit reductive to say like, well, we have an unprecedented wave of whatever. There's unprecedented things happening definitionally every year forward into the future we go.
No, that's
yes.
not true.
What's the thing that's been frozen in time?
I just explained it to you.
Yes, you laid out a bunch of numbers, and I just explained why they're contextless and meaningless. But now I'm asking, what is the thing that's unprecedented?
Look,
or I'm sorry, what would be a thing that is not changing in the past 30 years? Like if you had to look at something.
One of the most amazing things of arguing with anybody from your position is the extent to which they refuse to understand what words mean. I just explained to you repeatedly what unprecedented means. It means that it hasn't happened before. There have been times in the history of this country when its immigration was in the tens of thousands, and for us to go back to that would not be going forward to something unprecedented. It would be returning to something that we use.
It feels like he just argues over semantics, like saying it's not a lot. Like if you have more in the last 35 years than you had in the previous 2,000 years, just objectively, that's a lot. Like you could, from the perspective of the people who live there, that's a lot. Like from, if you're sitting there seeing this happen, that's a lot to you. So to sit there and pretend like you don't know what a lot means, that's just insane.
Used to do.
Sure.
Right?
And my question
is, what has happened in the last 30
I understand
years
what's happened. You've explained it
is
several
unprecedented.
times. Is there anything in U.S. culture, in British culture, that has remained the same for the past 30, 40, 50, 60 years, for the past 100 years, that doesn't have an unprecedented thing happening constantly?
Absolutely. I mean, that is what a culture is. It is what is preserved over time.
How?
A culture is what people do without having been told to do so by a law.
But what is an example of a culture that is unchanging?
How much have you traveled around the world?
Every year on Christmas, I watch Elf. I watch a certain kind of movies around that time of year. That's part of culture. That's what we do as a civilization. We have these little traditions that we do throughout the year. Like say 4th of July, you always cook hot dogs or whatever. Those are part of your culture. That's what he acts like he doesn't understand that because he's a coomer. Like he doesn't really even, it's just about having sex with different men or women or whatever, like whatever weird shit he's into.
Well,
probably more than you?
Probably not, actually.
Okay. So then you should be able to very easily answer. Here's an example of a culture that exists.
Every time I try and answer your question, you keep talking over
Well, it's because when you answer, you ramble and say irrelevant things. So my question is
how can I ramble in half a sentence?
You've been saying plenty of sentences. Do you think the speaking time up to this point is even, or do you think you've spoken more than me?
I have spoken more than you, but I haven't interrupted you.
So then you've had an opportunity to speak. You're just not answering my question. So my question is very simple. What's a culture that you feel has been unchanged for the past 50 years? Or what is an example of cultural preservation? I feel like cultures are evolving all the time. It's definitionally a part of culture.
Of course. Cultures are evolving all the time, but if you were to be plonked in 1970s Afghanistan and 1990s Afghanistan and 2010s Afghanistan and 1950s Britain, 1970s Britain and 2010s Britain, there would be common themes that run through both of those places so that you would instantly recognize, I am in Afghanistan, I am in Britain. Would you accept that?
I agree that different cultures are different, yes.
Right, well done, good. So we've got there then.
Well, you just established that there are...
Yeah, that's a little bit of a red herring there because you're going to be talking more when you're trying to explain it to the person who doesn't understand how words work. You're just going to be talking more because you're trying to explain something to the guy playing dumb. Like if I'm sitting here pretending like I don't know what math is and you're trying to explain math, yeah, you're going to talk a little more. I'm just going, I don't know. So that's what's going on here. Of course, Kisin's talking a little more because he's trying to explain something.
This is like saying
Different
that
cultures are different, which means that
that
they
wasn't
have
the
something
question.
about them
Yes, and
that makes them different.
If
right?
you have a brother, both of you will be different for your entire lives. But
But
that
there
doesn't
would
mean,
be a family culture that you have that's different to other families.
But you wouldn't be the same as you were when you were 10 years old.
No,
you
you
would grow
wouldn't.
and change,
Of
right?
course.
So when you talk about
But you're still the
preserving
same
culture,
person, right?
What?
You're still the same person.
Yeah, but you're dramatically changed.
But you're still the same.
No. Are you the same as you were 10 or 15 years ago? What do you mean by that? The same. You're not unchanged, right?
If we did a DNA test, I'm pretty sure he's the same person. I don't think he changed personhood. I don't think he can.
Are you pretending to be a moron or are you actually being one?
Exactly.
So your claim was that we need to preserve culture because cultures aren't supposed to change.
No, that's not my claim.
Okay, then help me understand. So
I will, if
because
you
because
stop
if you don't
interrupting.
remember, this whole topic started with I'm curious, what is the thing that is precedented? What's the thing that happens continuously through all of history that isn't changing? And then you pointed to the fact that Afghanistan and the United Kingdom are different cultures. Like that's something that I would reject.
No, I didn't. I was just explaining to you what cultures are, which are the cultural differences between groups of people that remain fairly constant over time, despite changing somewhat, as all cultures.
So we can't arrest the person who committed a crime in the past because they aren't the same person. Yeah, that's the logic this guy has. He acts, he plays dumb. That's his whole shtick. He just pretends like he doesn't know how words work. It's not. What do you mean a lot? Yeah, it's a lot. What do you mean? I can't define every word, and then you're going to criticize me because I have to define every word to you because you don't know what a lot means. Oh, sorry.
Your definition of culture is the
insane.
difference between your culture and another
No,
culture?
I gave you my definition.
You just said it was the
I came
differences
here-
between cultures that change over time that define one culture against another one.
Okay, let's reset. And
Okay.
you talk for a bit, and then I talk for a bit, and then you talk for a bit.
Well, no,
and
because I
talk
noticed
for a
that this is how it feels like a lot of these types of people, the centrists, the reformers, the MAGA, whatever, is you paint with such broad brushstrokes that by the end of a sentence, I feel like you haven't really said much at all. And I'm just kind of curious why, when you guys speak about things like the preservation of culture, I don't really hear you allude to anything concrete. Or when you talk about wanting to preserve something, you talk about how something has changed. I don't necessarily hear like what are the things that are changing that you don't like. You'll point to things like crimes, but I mean like crimes are illegal. Obviously, they shouldn't be happening. I just don't really hear anything concrete ever, and it's very unsatisfying to listen to a bunch of people kind of ramble on and on and on without ever having a clear point about what they're talking about. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out for British or American culture, what are these things that you feel are common, maybe you go back 30, 40, 50 years, that were common across the whole country that you feel are changing in a way that they never changed in the past?
They're allergic to it.
Done?
Are you going to answer that question? He's not going to answer the question. Go ahead.
I've attempted to answer your question many times, and I'll do so again. However, first of all, am I going to be okay to speak now for a bit? Is that going to happen?
Sure. Can you repeat my question first so I know what you're...
Your question is about what is culture. You brought up crime.
That wasn't my question. My
It wasn't your
question is,
question.
over the past 30 or 40 years, what are things that have changed in American or British culture that you feel over the past 200 years before that were unchanging?
Okay. One of the things that has changed in Britain over the last 30
Grooming gangs. That's changed. That's a thing that changed. It wasn't like that before, and it's like that now. Grooming gangs.
years is we now have extensive number of Islamist terrorist attacks, mass stabbings, mass rape of British girls by Islamist and Muslim grooming gangs.
There you
This
go.
is not something that happened in this culture before.
Okay, so sexual
So
assault and
that-
rape did happen before in
Did you hear the words I said, or did
So you said
take
grooming
the-
gangs. I know there's the example from the 80s and 90s with the Rotherham.
They're not from the
grooming
80s,
gang.
90s. They're happening right now.
What is another grooming gang example? Because I know there are rapes and stuff that happen, but I don't think there are.
Yeah, well, let me explain it to you. So grooming gangs, this is a euphemism that we use to pretend that they're not what they are.
They've started happening on the subways. That's a big change. From back when they were doing it, it was like something, a guy put on a ski mask in the middle of the night and do it. Now they do it openly on the middle of the subway. That's the difference.
Are mass rape gangs where young British girls, usually underage, but also often sometimes young women, would be plied with drugs, plied with alcohol, would be taken from the care homes where they were, predominantly by Pakistani, sometimes other Indian subcontinent Muslims. They would be targeted primarily because they were white and British, so these were racially aggravated hate crimes. And they would be mass raped over periods of years sometimes. That did
that's
not
what we're
used to
talking about,
happen
Ken.
in Britain.
No one can.
So that is a
It
cultural
did used
change.
to happen.
Can I
'cause the
finish
big-
what I'm saying,
Okay,
please?
you're not going to answer my question. Okay.
I am answering a question.
Well, but my question was, what are examples? I don't think this has happened outside of the Rotherham grooming gang, that whole scandal. There have been rapes, there have been gang rapes, but the idea of like a coordinated grooming gang type mass Pakistani targeting British girls rapes, that type of thing is not a thing that I'm aware has been seen in Britain outside of the large Rotherham scandal.
So, well, I don't know. I think the fact that somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million British girls might have been raped by these gangs is quite a big deal, and it represents a change in the culture of this country that I think is quite unwelcome.
I never said it wasn't a big deal. I think rape is bad. I just think it's bad when white people do it too. I think it's bad when everybody does it. My understanding is right now for the crime stats in the United Kingdom, it tends to be more white people are even overrepresented in terms of sexual assault and rape.
What? What? Okay.
But I'm aware that there are immigrants that rape people as well. I think all rape is bad, but the idea that there is a mass Islamist, jihadist, rape gang-centered thing
That's as stupid as saying that white people are responsible for all the gang violence in South Central. That's as stupid as that is. That's what that sounds like.
in the United Kingdom that's functioning.
So
I think
how many girls would have to be raped for you to admit that it's a mass thing?
the question isn't if it's a mass
Well,
thing. The question is if it's organized. You have a huge problem with definitions. I'm sorry, let me try to keep this back. You're not understanding. You're not following the conversation.
Stephen,
rape is bad, but organized.
The only one worse than the Dems is the Zionists. They're much worse. You can't even get them to admit anything.
Grooming gang.
You've asked
rape
me a
is
lot of
that's
questions,
thing.
and every time I answer them, you
you're not
ignore my
answering really
answer.
at all, but
Now
go ahead.
answer my question.
Yeah.
Answer my question. If 500,000 girls have been mass raped in this way, specifically being targeted because they were not of a particular religion or ethnicity, how many of them would have to be treated in this way for you to admit that it's a mass thing? What's the number that makes a mass? Answer my question.
Wasn't. I don't know. I don't know how you would identify
Give
a
us
mass
a number.
thing.
Give us a number.
The question was organized.
Give us a
grooming
number.
thing.
You said
500,001. So you're
Okay.
right. You're right beneath the threshold. Maybe tomorrow
Well,
you'll
it's-
have it.
it's actually-
So the question is
it's
there
actually
organized?
between 500,000
Okay,
and
so
1 million.
okay, I'll ramble for a
you
second, and
agree
then you
that
can
it's
ramble
mass.
afterwards.
So
We're
you
not gonna
agree
go back
that
and
it's
forth. My
mass.
issue is because you guys do this thing over and over again, where you won't accurately identify a problem. You'll invent these things because rape isn't bad enough. Now it has to be like a mass grooming gang rape thing. And then what happens is you conservatives, you play this game where you falsely identify a problem, you lie to the audience about.
That's just as disingenuous as saying that Epstein it shouldn't be talked about as a conspiracy type thing. You should just say it's just a guy behind a hooker. That's all. Yeah, she was 12, but that's just a complication. Like that's what he's doing here. He's equivocating.
It. And then you manage to gain power. You go through with some wacky scheme. Go figure, the wacky scheme doesn't fix anything, and then somehow you come back with the same recycled narratives over and over again, asking for another shot at it. It's happening right now with Farage and reform. It happened with Brexit. Brexit didn't reduce immigration. It didn't help you with your economy. It didn't do anything really good for the United Kingdom at all. And then it's happening now with reform coming in and making all of these promises to the British people that you're going to be able to cut all of the revenues coming in. You're going to be able to increase all of your funding. You're going to have a no-wait NHS. And it's all built on the same lies over and over again that didn't help you affect any positive outcomes in the past, and it's not going to help you affect any positive outcomes in the future. You can sit here and you can be upset about it, but I watched you and Matt Goodwin debate on stage where you guys both made the bold prediction that once the Tories were out, your immigration numbers would be over 1 million per year. They plummeted to 300,000. I haven't heard you say anything about that. Your predictions were completely wrong, just as they were with Brexit as well.
I want you to notice that the Adderall makes you do that twitch thing too, where you just can't sit still and he's moving like that. That's an Adderall thing.
Well, that was a wonderful presentation. The problem for you is I voted Remain in the referendum.
Because you hadn't been bullied by the Cambridge students yet. I'm aware of the history, but I know.
So you've come here with a bunch of talking points. That's great.
Hold on. We can break down
Stephen,
anything you want.
stop interrupting.
Don't accuse me of having talking points.
Stop
Deal with my
interrupting.
arguments.
Stop interrupting.
Then address what I
Stop
said.
interrupting.
Address what I said.
Stop interrupting.
Address what I've said.
Stop
I
interrupting.
believe in you.
That's how you have to do it. You just have to treat him like a child if he's going to act like one. You just have to be the daddy in the fucking debate.
Stop interrupting. I let you talk and I let you make your points. Have some respect for me and for my opportunity to express myself as well. That is how a debate is conducted. So stop interrupting. We started this with a conversation about mass immigration, and I gave you the facts on it, and I defined what immigration is, right? Mass immigration. Now, you're talking about culture. I also explained to you what culture is, and I explained it to you by explaining that it's a continuity of certain things which may also evolve over time. Now, in terms of your point about mass immigration since Brexit, I was not a supporter of Brexit. I didn't think it was necessarily a good idea. And I agree with you that it hasn't reduced immigration. But I don't see how that's relevant to this conversation. We have had mass immigration happen in this country continually over a long period of time, which has changed the country in the way that I gave you. And I gave you a number of examples, like Islamist terrorism, like grooming gangs and other things, which I don't think you're able to address because they counteract the argument that you keep making, which is, well, nothing changes when you bring in 8 million people over 30 years.
Did I say that?
Can I finish, please?
Did I say that?
Can
Why do
I
you have
finish?
to invent
Can I finish,
points?
please?
You just can't address anything.
Can I
say?
finish,
Okay.
please? If I
Pretend it's
interrupted
a
you,
podcast
if I
episode. Go ahead.
interrupted you every
Make a
time you
position for me.
misrepresent my
Go for
argument,
it.
you'd never talk at
Go
all.
for it. Okay.
So can I finish, please? You made the point that basically what I'm trying to say is, not trying to say, what I'm saying is, when you bring in large numbers of people into a country from a different culture, that will necessarily change the culture. The other thing that I explained to you is there's been such a large wave of immigration into this country now that has fundamentally changed the sense of British people about the place in which they live. It is affecting the demographic dynamics of major cities in this country and the way people feel about that. But all of those things, the facts that I gave you about immigration, they are what they are. You can think that they're good, you can think that they're bad. That is a separate conversation. The facts are what they are. Right? There's also a thing about how British people feel about it. When I came to this country in 1996, 3% of the British public thought that immigration was a major concern. Today, about 65 to 70% of British people say that there are too many immigrants in this country and too many immigrants coming here. Now, I think British people probably have a better idea of how they feel about immigration than you, Stephen, and that is how they feel.
Why do you think over half the British population believes that the majority of the immigrants here today are here illegally, if they've got such a great handle on it or a great idea about what immigration is doing to the country?
The reason that people overestimate immigration is people generally, when asked about things, overestimate pretty much everything or underestimate things terribly because people are not very good with numbers. But the other reason, of course, people aren't able to quote you the exact number of people who
I didn't ask for a quote of the exact number.
You said this earlier, and I'm addressing your broader point, which is why do people misunderstand the immigration statistics, is that people don't look at immigration as this is the number of people who came this year and this is the number of people who came last year. They look at the reality of their lives, they look at the change they see around them, and what they're really concerned about is the cumulative impact of immigration over the period of their lifetime, which, as I explained to you, has been huge, unprecedented over the last 35 years, and will be even more unprecedented in terms of its cumulative impact over the next 35 years. Now, it's true that immigration has come down to 300 or something thousand.
Destiny's trying to pretend like he doesn't understand that bringing that many people in and giving them voting rights means that your culture is going to change. You're going to be going to a Sharia court instead of a fucking real court. That's the issue. That's what he's trying to pretend like he doesn't understand. But he knows that's what this is about. Whenever you import that many people and let them vote, your culture is going to change. You may not have a city hall in the future. You may have some mosque looking building that you got to go to. That's the issue, because you're giving these people voting rights and now they can come and change they're going to leave the rubble that they left and come here and just take over this nice place that we've built over the last millennia. And then now it's theirs, right? Because who's going to stay there? Who's going to stay there and go to Sharia courts? I'm not. I won't live in a place where I got to go to Sharia court. And I think people in England are starting to realize that.
In the last year. Doesn't mean it will stay that way, but also I never predicted it would get to 1 million. I think Matt did. But the point I would make is the transformation over a 30-year period is what people actually care about, and which is what they're right to care about. Now, as for the point about illegal immigration, yeah, it's true. Illegal immigration is a smaller percentage of the total immigration that we have than legal immigration, but it's still higher today than it was 35 years ago and 30 years ago, which is way too high. A
little quick aside. I messaged your boy, First Amender, and tried to talk to him about scheduling a debate. I messaged him last night, so I'm just waiting on him to reply on Twitter. So thanks for that. Thanks for that advice.
Legal immigration should be zero. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Do we have any final thoughts before we move on to the next?
Yeah, I mean, every crime should be zero, but there's always going to be some amount of crime or some amount of illegal immigrants. I guess
Can't
the
agree
issue
with
I
that.
have is that, you say, why do the British people not understand the exact numbers? I didn't ask for the exact numbers. It's like 10 or 11 million to 1 million. There are different estimates from 500,000 to 1.3 million or whatever illegals. That's a big ratio, 10 to 1 to be off by, to assume it's 50-50, that, or that there are more illegals than there are legal immigrants here. And I think the issue is people in your position, or people like Reform or Restore, depending on how far right you want to go, lie constantly about the immigrant population in the United Kingdom. And then as a result of selling those lies to the people, you get these ridiculous plans or attempts to fix it all in the United Kingdom. And because the problem was never as severe as it was stated in the first place, the problem ends up not being solved, and then you exacerbate other problems. So at the end of the Tory government, with this attempt with like the Rwanda plan, this idea that you're going to ship people to other countries to have them processed first, or with the idea that leaving Brexit would give the UK greater control over their illegal immigrant population. And the reality is it did just the opposite. You didn't have the right to access the same people that would try to claim asylum in the EU, and then if they were rejected once there, to send them back if they came to Britain next. You lost access to a lot of these things. And then the same people that were in charge of pushing those ideas are now telling you and selling you on the idea that reform is going to come in and somehow fix the very same issues that they've been lying about and have failed to fix in the past. And you might hear this talking point, this cope that, well, reform is different. We're not going to be like the old conservatives. But then you've got all your politicians are going to be MP Tories that are defecting to join the new Reform Party. So I don't know where all this new blood is going to come from. I don't know. It just seems like a whole bunch of like, here's a fake problem. I'm going to put it in front of you. There is like a real problem here. Regardless of what you said earlier, I don't think rapes are good, mass rapes or normal rapes. I think there should be some probably cap on what type of immigrants and how many should come to the country. I just never really hear a discussion on any of that. I just hear 500,000 British girls have been gang raped by mass grooming gangs, and it wasn't like that when I came over in '96, despite the fact that those Rotherham grooming gang scandals started in the '80s. So I don't feel like I ever hear anything of substance being spoken about.
Well, it's a pity we didn't have someone from Reform on stage so you could rehash your Wikipedia talking points to them.
You're a Reform voter, though, right?
No, I've never
Really?
voted. I've never voted for Reform.
Yeah, I think that is a bit of a problem that you're bringing up there, AWOL. I think that they use those terms, like now they're using anti-Semitism to try and they just use these labels that they put on everybody so that they can shut you up and stop you from saying what you want to say. I really don't care for that. I think that's a big problem that we're experiencing now, that they just want to put you in once they put that label on you, they're just trying to signal to everybody that no one has to listen to this person because he's this label. If he's racist, you don't listen to him. So just stop listening to the words that he's saying because he's racist, or because he's anti-Semitic, or he's a woman hater, a misogynist. They just throw these terms at you, and it just puts you in a class. So now you have to argue to get out of that. And I've gotten to the point now where you can call me whatever the fuck you want. I'll be all of them then, because I'm not gonna bend to that will. Like, you're not gonna put a label on me. I'll tell you what I am, and you can listen to the words that I'm saying, and you can call it whatever the fuck you want. This is the reality we're living in. I'm a realist. I'm not any of those things, really. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not racist. I'm not sexist. I'm not a misogynist. I'm a realist. Like, that's just what I look at everything. And if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. So let's get back to it.
Would you vote for reform in the upcoming election?
Depends on who stands in my constituency. Last election, I voted for a Liberal Democrat.
I didn't ask about last election. In the
Okay.
upcoming election, will you vote for reform?
I will probably vote for the same person who's a Liberal Democrat.
Okay, so you don't think you would support the liberal reform guy? I don't know, in your
Liberal
constituencies?
Reform. There's no party called Liberal
Or, I'm sorry,
Reform.
you won't support the reform candidate in whatever upcoming election. I don't know what constituency you live in.
I just told you that at the last election, I voted for Liberal Democrat.
Yeah, I know, but the
And
reason
at
why
the
you're saying that is because you won't answer for the next one.
Stop
Try to
interrupting.
tell the question,
Stop
dodge.
interrupting. Stop interrupting.
Yeah, go for it.
I just told you that at the last election, I voted for a Liberal Democrat, and at the next election, I intend to vote for him as well.
I'm just curious. You said in the past that you regret, or not that you regret, that you voted Remain for Brexit. Do you think that was a good vote? Do you think you should have remained, or do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I don't regret my vote for Remain, no.
Do you think Brexit was a mistake?
I think it had its negatives and positives, yeah. Like,
Are you sure you're not running for a political party right now? Because that was the most politician answer I've ever heard in my life. Do you think that on net was Brexit a mistake?
Every decision has trade-offs that are positive and negative.
Remember what I said earlier about saying words that mean nothing? Obviously, this is true. But
No,
I'm asking, do you think that Brexit on net, was it a mistake?
I think a lot of people think that Brexit ruined the economy.
I'm not asking what a lot of people think. I'm asking you on net. Do you think that Brexit
He's trying to do a gotcha here. Like people say that to you because I voted for Trump. Is that a good thing now? Do you want to apologize? No, I'm not going to apologize because the two candidates I got were both Zionists. I have no evidence that we wouldn't be in the same situation with Kamala there. They would have just had to write a much smaller check or found a lot less incriminating stuff to blackmail her with. This is not about that. I needed that so I could start my channel because the censorship was from the left then. Now it's from the right. So now we have to address that. And my next vote, I may be voting for a Democrat to get that out of here because I'm not going to have people telling me I can't talk or criticize another country in a country where I'm supposed to have freedom of speech. That's bullshit. That's bullshit.
it was a mistake?
I think it had some things that made things worse, and I think it had some that...
If you were God and you could choose whether or not the UK voted 51% Brexit or 49% Brexit, what would you push the button to have had them vote? 51% they would Brexit or 49% and then they would remain in the European Union?
I honestly don't know.
Okay. But so the reason why I ask this question is to illustrate how frustrating it is when people like you say things like, well, I voted liberal last election or I voted Remain. Okay, you don't stand by that anymore, though. You constantly do this thing. No, you don't. You constantly do this thing where you come on stage or you go on your show and you'll say things like, I used to be a liberal, but the liberals have changed so much. Or I used to be a left-leaning person. And I know you've tweeted the dumb picture. I know you've done it. They've changed so much, and now I have to identify with the center right. I've heard you literally say things like Tommy Robinson make statements to the left on immigration compared to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama.
He does.
Yeah, okay.
He does.
I've heard you say things like this, right? But then when I ask, but then you guys say that everybody else has changed.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to vote for a Democrat. I'll probably be voting for a Libertarian, but I'm really hoping we get a third party this time. I've got a really strong feeling that we're going to end up having a third party because they're going to give us two more Zionist candidates to vote for. You can vote for the Zionist Democrat or you can vote for the Zionist Republican. I'm not playing that game no more. I'm not voting for anyone who took AIPAC money. I'm not voting for anyone who sides with Israel in any of this shit. And it's real easy to see. You don't even have to go and Google whether they took AIPAC money. You can just watch them talk, and you can find out if they're really with Israel. You could find out real easy. Yeah, like I had no idea the dude was going to lie about everything. Like if you go off his first candidacy, he wasn't really that bad. Like he wasn't great, but he was like better than the Democrats. Like the shit they showed us after that was like insane. Yeah, third party. I've already got a name for it, the Independent Party, because we're breaking free from Israel. And we're all independent voters, mostly, the people that are going to be in the party. So why not call it the Independent Party? We'll have Republican, Democrat, and Independent. And eventually the independents will split into left and right independent, I'm sure, because we're going to have a lot of Democrats there. But that's just my theory on how this should go or might go. Yeah, man, third party would be so awesome. Oh, just 3 choices is so much better than 2.
And then I ask you about your past political votes, you won't defend them. So it seems like you're the one that's changed, which is fine, but you should just own that.
I voted Remain for reasons that were entirely different from the reason that most people voted Remain. The reason I voted Remain is I thought that it would weaken Europe's ability to stand up to Russia. I think I've been proven right on that. And I think the division within Europe has made Europe weaker in terms of its ability to stand up to Russia, and I think we've seen that.
Yeah,
so in that respect, I think I was right to vote Remain. What I don't agree with is the narrative that a lot of people like to spin, that Brexit ruined the economy. I don't think that's true at all. If you look at the way other European economies are performing, they're performing even worse than the British economy. So my attempt to give you a nuanced answer is not my refusal to stand by my votes. It's an attempt to use my brain and give you a nuanced answer. Now, in terms of final, did you want to wrap up and move on?
Yeah, just final thoughts on this topic. That would be great, guys.
Yeah, so final thoughts on this topic. I would just recap and maybe add one other thing. We have had a level of mass immigration into Britain that has been extremely disruptive over a fairly short period of time, that has created an environment in which major cities in this country are effectively no longer the domain of the native population of this country, which is very disruptive to the people who've lived here. I'm not one of them. I myself am an immigrant, but I totally recognize that that's happened. I think culturally there have been some terrible things that have happened. I mean, the example of terrorism and grooming gangs is just one of them. But the failure of integration more broadly has been a big problem, to the point where you now saw in the by-election in Gorton Denton, the Green candidate campaigning in Urdu, in a foreign language, in a language not of our country, which I think is a signal of the terrible divisiveness that is we are likely to see in other communities or in other constituencies where some communities haven't integrated at all. And I think what that signals is a democracy works when people vote on the ideas that are being offered to them, not the ethnic and religious background of the candidate or the things that they will tell them. And I think you're increasingly seeing that. So all of these things are big worries to me. And of course, a lot of this would have been much easier to manage if we hadn't also at the same time had the doctrine of diversity, inclusion, and multiculturalism, which have, instead of creating a monoculture into which people are encouraged to buy in and integrate, have instead created a society in which people are encouraged to see themselves as members of an individual community, which I think is essentially the end of
Now, Konstantin is a Zionist, so he would never admit this, but I want you all to think of the people that shoved the diversity nonsense down our throats. Had it on every TV show, had it on every news broadcast, made it seem like it was the best thing we could ever happen to us is diversity. I want you to think about the people that did that. That's the media, right? And that's owned by Israel. They don't care. They want us thinking like this because their job is to separate us, to get us fighting left versus right. That's what they do. They do it on both channels, and both channels are owned by different Zionists. Like Murdoch owns Fox, and you got Ellison's own they own CNN and I think CBS. They own like a bunch of them. Like, so it's all Zionists. This is just like Zionism wars. This is the way they split us up. If they got you hating half of your country, y'all can't get together and talk about, hey, these motherfuckers are invading us. They're changing our laws where we don't even have freedom of speech anymore. You can't, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't really, there's no way to bridge that gap whenever they're constantly making us hate each other. That's why I don't watch either of the news networks anymore, unless it's just, I know going in, it's going to be propaganda, and I'm going in just to evaluate the propaganda I'm going to be looking at. That's the only way you can even mess with like anything in the media.
Of a democratic process the way we've understood it to this point. So I think these are all terrible developments, and if this continues, it will only get worse.
Me too.
Thank you.
I mean, we introduced new things, so I don't know. I don't know what the monoculture is.
How many final thoughts are we going to have?
Well, I mean, when we introduce new concepts like DEI was why Liz Truss, helped 700,000 people come to this country from mainly non-EU places. I just don't know how DEI was the policy there. Also,
a little note on that subject we were just talking about too. You notice that the people that shoved all that down our throats, the Israeli faction, they don't have those same diversity rules for them. Those are rules for us. For the Goyim, we're supposed to behave that way. We're supposed to just integrate all these foreigners and everybody, and we're just all supposed to be a melting pot. And then you look at their fucking roster and the people that are like, do you think Hollywood executives aren't like all Zionists and all mostly from one religion? Yes, they are. So why do they not have to have diversity while they preach to us that we have to? That's what you've got to start looking behind the veil and seeing. These people don't practice what they preach, and then they preach it to us and tell us we're bad people if we don't do it. Mm-hmm. So that's the craziness. That's where we're at in 2026. What's this? Yeah. They don't show you stories that don't support the narrative they want, just like that girl I told you about, Gabriela Saldana. You won't see that on Fox News. You probably won't see it on CNN either because it's about Zionism. That's my point. You don't even get the news because people are just, they come in, they turn on the nightly news and they watch whatever station the programs them. That's where we're at in America. You just get your programming every night and they tell you what to think and, how to navigate the world. And it's not a good way to navigate the world. It's the way that they want us to navigate the world. Because if it was a good way, they'd be doing it too, wouldn't they? If diversity was a strength, wouldn't they be doing it? Wouldn't they have like black and white and all nationalities in charge of the boards and their their executives? I think they would. Yep. I was a brainwashed Republican my entire life. I'm kind of considered a libertarian, but that's other people telling me that. I don't read libertarian books or anything. I just tell you what's right and wrong. I call myself a realist. So yeah, we all were. All right, back to debate.
There from the Tories that enabled all that mass migration. And when we talk about the monoculture,
you're right,
I don't know about the United Kingdom. I mean, Scottish people don't seem like they share a monoculture with English people. I feel like rural people and city people don't have much of a monoculture. I don't know if they've ever had a monoculture. I know in the United States, we talk all the time about the difference between city slickers and the good old people in the country and doing the farms and everything. But then we're also simultaneously very concerned about demographic change in the cities. But then at every other point, it seems like the country-related people hate the urban-related culture anyway. So yeah, I don't know. It'd be interesting at some point, maybe at some time in your life, if you ever wanted to dive into these issues for real, maybe on your show or with somebody you're more comfortable with who won't challenge you as much. It'd be interesting to hear a conversation about what do these values look like. When you talk about changing culture, and the answer is, well, some people bring crime. That's not culture. That's like changing culture would require you to identify some fundamental aspect of the culture of a country and then change and then to point out to how that fundamental aspect is changing. When you say immigrants are coming and a lot of them commit crime, it's not really a real answer. It's not very satisfying. It's not really getting to the heart of the issues. And
Shall we move on to wokeism?
Sure.
So the question is, speaking of culture, has wokeism caused harm to the political climate?
You want to go first again?
Yeah, sure. My question is going to be the exact same as the last one. How do we define wokeism? And can we name, like...
Yeah, they'll that's what I was talking about earlier. They'll just find a box to fucking put you in and put that label on you. So now no one will listen to your good ideas because you're an anti-Semite or you're a racist or you're a misogynist. Those are all just labels, and that's their way of controlling us. They're just trying to figure out a way where they don't have to argue good points because they don't have any and they know it. Like I reviewed an Andrew Wilson debate the other day, and I said he lost because he didn't come in with good arguments. He's one of the best debaters in the world, and he came in. His whole argument was, "Well, you like you voted for Joe, you let Joe Biden get away with it," and that's not a good argument when you're trying to convince people that Trump isn't crazy, because that's what the topic was they were debating. How the person you're debating, how he voted last term, how is that relevant to whether Trump is crazy or not? Right? He was just trying to. Andrew was doing the same trick. He was just trying to put a label on him so he could. So we just ignore your commentary because you're a liberal, so we don't listen to you. That's what he was doing, and it was just like it was scary to me because I watch a lot of Andrew's debates, and when he debates feminism, it's a different story. Like he can dissect you piece by piece, and he brings arguments for everything. He can bring you a study. He can bring you this. He has everything to back up what he says. And he went on Piers Morgan, and all he said is, "Yeah, but you voted for you let Biden get away with it." So, to me, as a person who voted for Trump, how does that even apply? I did vote for Trump. So I didn't want Biden in there. I want Biden to go to jail still. I want Trump to go to jail now too. Like it's just a bad argument. And it was really sad to me to see him doing that. And I think that's just a sign that he's on the wrong side of that discussion, like that topic. Please don't. Yeah, that's same type thing. Yeah. Back to the debate.
3 woke policies that we think are destroying Western culture.
You're a participant in this debate, so why don't you define them?
Well, the thing is, I can't because your guys' definitions for everything change at all points in time. That's always the issue. That's always the frustrating thing when it comes to fighting.
Who's us guys?
Conservatives.
I'm not a conservative.
I know you say you're not, but the conservative identification of wokeism and the idea...
That is literally the criticism levied against Destiny and his side. That, the neoclassical thing where you just like say, well, what really is racist? What really is this thing? And you just act like you don't know the word. That's his whole shtick. That's what he does in every debate. He acts like he didn't know what a lot meant earlier. And then he just accused them of saying that they have changing definitions. How absurd is that? This is crazy. It's just more left versus right. You're left, you do this. You're right, you do this. It's so boring to me now.
That wokeism, whatever that
forget about
boogeyman-
conservatism. Let's
Okay.
talk about wokeness. So
Okay.
what would be your definition of wokeness?
In the broadest sense, usually it's social issues that are very, very far left of the norm, I guess. But these positions in the United States at least tend to be held by...
Such as?
It might be certain things related to, I mean, trans people are obviously the hot go-to topic for everybody. It might be things specifically related to trans people. It might be things related to, they call it CRT, now they call it, or there was affirmative action, then CRT, then DEI. It might be people who are socialists, about the economy, or whatever that means to people. It really depends on where you're at, who would consider what woke, or what the conservative boogeyman of the day is.
I don't know what the conservative point of view. So your point of view is that wokeness is about trans people and...
What you were saying earlier about Destiny being intelligent, I don't find him to be very intelligent. I find him to be very articulate. And I find that a lot of people on the left, they're really good at speaking. And so it kind of makes people think that they're intelligent. But whenever you start questioning them on the words that they're using, a lot of times they don't even know the definition of the word they're saying. So I find he's very, like, not so erudite. Like, she's not very smart, but she's very articulate. Like, she's good at, and she went to college for that, and that's what they do. They go to communication classes and they learn how to talk and communicate better. They're really good at that, and that's a type of intelligence, I guess. But it's really more of an articulate thing than being an intelligent thing, because, like I said, you can ask them things and you can see they don't understand what you're saying. So intelligence is measured different than this, like how you communicate with people. Like on an IQ test, there's no verbal section. It's all just pattern recognition and like noticing things and figuring things out. It's very different than being good at talking. But I wish I was better. I wish I was more articulate. I could try and learn from them and be more articulate. But I spent my COVID and I didn't talk to anybody through COVID. Like 6 years, I didn't talk to people, anybody except my mom, really, and a couple of friends that I'd talk maybe once a month. So I had to start getting used to talking to people again. And you do see that, like, you become almost feral when you don't talk to people for that long. It's a weird thing that happens. So, but I do wish I was better at being articulate like they are. They use really big words, but they don't know what they mean, though.
DEI?
That seems to be the case when I look at
So that's your definition.
I don't define things as a wokeism. It seems like a really vapid, stupid definition to me. I would just talk about the issue or the policy
I
itself.
guess your issue is with the topic of our debate then.
Well, no, because I think that you obsessively talk about wokeism, so it's probably a good thing for us to have a discussion
I'm asking
on.
you to define it so that instead of continually asking me questions and then pretending not to understand my answers, we actually address your argument. So
If you feel like there's an answer I don't understand, you can feel free to ask me to explain your answer. I can do it with ease. They're very simple. You only need the cognitive power of like a 9-year-old to understand them. So
your definition of wokeness is? Again, just coming back to it. So we're clear about what we're discussing.
The median view on social beliefs, the things that are to the furthest left, or the most progressive, the most college student-y, young things, they tend to be around like.
I think wokeism is like porn. Like you know it when you see it. Like the Supreme Court said, you know it when you see it. And whenever someone's being woke, you know it when you see it. Like it's not something that's easily defined because it's so many different things. It's like shutting people down so they can't talk. It's cancel culture. It's all these different things. So when it's 50 different things, it's hard to define it because then when your definition doesn't include this, that skates out. So it's a very difficult thing to describe. You have to just kind of identify it when you see it type thing.
Gender things or minority issues or LGBTQI, whatever status, these tend to be like things that people identify as woke.
So what we're discussing in this section of the debate is whether far left politics and progressivism has ruined society. Is that the discussion?
Yeah, sure.
What would you mean?
The question was on wokeism.
Right.
The issue is...
And I got you to define it as far left progressivism.
Yes.
So...
Insofar as I would define it, I don't see it as a major threat, at least to the United States, because I don't think that the people that tend to hold these views have any real political power. It tends to be college kids and people on Twitter. But conservatives are very concerned about this, and they talk about these issues all the time, and then they use them to power their policies that end up being even more regressive than the super woke stuff was progressive, because it wasn't really manifesting in a real way anyway. And now I have a country where half the states don't really have the ability to get an abortion for women because people thought that every 4-year-old was being forcibly transitioned to another gender. It's my issue with it.
Well, that's your country and your issue. But just coming back to our definitions so that we can know what we're discussing.
No one said they were forcibly being made to transition. We thought they were corrupting children. Like when you have teachers that tell your child that they could be a different gender when they can't, that's what we were worried about. Not you're going to grab them out of a class and go cut their bird off. We're thinking they're going to talk them into it. Like that's not the same thing. He's misclassifying that.
What you're addressing is, has far left progressive politics had a negative impact on our society? That's how you understand this discussion, correct?
Am I going to say yes here, and you're going to go, I'm glad you agree that wokeism is far left?
No.
Yeah, I guess that would be my understanding of this discussion,
Okay.
yes.
So,
yes.
Good. Now we know what we're actually discussing. So, in terms of its impact, I mean, one of the most obvious things, and I brought up...
What is your definition of wokeism?
I agree with you. I agree with your definition.
Okay. All right. Okay. I think it's okay to agree on a definition to have the discussion, right?
That's why I did it, so that we could agree on the definition.
Oh, okay. It felt a little bit more passive aggressive than that, but my bad.
Well, that's your bad. Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
I've worked out the tricks that you play, and so I've trapped you in your own logic.
And to be clear, the trick that I just played was asking you for the definition of a term.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. All right,
That's
my bad.
right.
I
That's
know that
right.
we don't like that here.
Exactly
Okay, my
right.
bad. Okay, go ahead.
That's exactly right. Because what you do is you don't define it yourself, so that you can then argue with my definition for half an hour, and so we can't have the actual debate. Now be quiet,
Yep.
and
I'll
gonna
define my
now
terms
be
if you
quiet,
want. Well, I'm only
be
talking about
quiet,
somebody to be quiet.
be quiet.
I'll define my terms if you want
Be
me
quiet.
to. But wokeism
Be
is the term you
quiet.
guys use.
It took me about 10 minutes to get you to define woke. I'm glad we did it. Now we can have
Now
the
you're gonna
actual
use my
discussion.
definition. I'm glad I could
Now
provide
we
you
can
with
have
one.
the
Go
actual
for it.
discussion.
Okay.
Now we can have the actual discussion. So if your understanding of the question is, has far left progressive politics made our societies worse? I completely agree with your definition, and I agree with the premise of the question that it has made things worse for a number of reasons. I mean, the trans thing became a big talking point because it's so ridiculous, not because it's so hugely actually impactful on society, although I do think a small number of children being given puberty blockers and an even smaller number of children being given gender transition surgery is a terrible thing that's happened. I think more broadly, though, I mean, one of the most obvious examples is we now have a society which has, I mean, it's not codified and it's not expressed in, in the, like, no one says publicly we now discriminate against these groups of people, unless occasionally they do. So, for example, the Royal Air Force in this country, when they were in a recruiting drive, they were really struggling to get pilots. And there was a woman there who got fired from the Royal Air Force because she refused to go along with the policy. Her supervisor said to her, "We're not hiring any more useless straight white men." She said, "I don't agree with this policy, it's discriminatory," and she was fired. We've had a system of anti-male, anti-white.
Can I just ask a quick question?
No,
So if I were to look
I'm
that
not
up,
finished
the
yet.
Royal Air
I'm
Force
not
had a
finished
policy
yet.
of not
I'm
hiring
not,
straight white
I'm not
men.
finished
Is
yet.
that true?
I'm not finished yet.
Okay. I have a feeling it's not, but okay.
So this is something you can look up. It was covered extensively in the news in this country. Probably wasn't covered that well on Wikipedia where you did the research, but
No, but on The Sun and all of your
but
favorite
it was-
publications, I'm sure they talked about it a lot.
no, actually, it was covered extensively across the
And
mainstream
that what they
media.
covered was that the Royal Air Force was
Can I
not
finish
hiring
my
straight
points,
white men. Well,
Stephen?
you seem to
Stephen,
respond to some things, but
just
not others.
well-
So that wasn't the policy. I can tell because you're not answering
That
but that's okay.
was the policy that was pursued by the Royal Air Force. It was revealed by this whistleblower who was fired for revealing it. The BBC in this country has internships that are not available to white people. We effectively have created a system of passive, tacit, sometimes open discrimination against different groups of people. And one of the reasons that the sort of reactionary sentiment, which you try and paint me as representing, which I don't, is rising in this country and rising quite quickly, including ethno-nationalist sentiment, is because of this. And the reason I opposed wokeness from the very beginning and far-left progressivism from the very beginning was that it was obvious to me that the number one consequence of pursuing radical left-wing progressivism and racial essentialism of this kind would be that the majority population would begin to pursue identity politics for itself. If you discriminate against white men and say so openly, it's going to be a very short period of time before white men look at that and say, well, if we're now picking people for jobs based on skin color, I am the oppressed minority now, or I'm the oppressed majority now. We need to look after my interests. And the reason you see the reactionary forces rising, both in America, in the rest of Europe, and in this country, is precisely because they've been pushed into this corner by woke leftists. And that is one of the major ways that this movement has damaged our society, as I predicted all along.
So I would say the least impressive thing about conservative predictions is that typically what they'll do is they will build their own enemies, they will cry about the enemies, and then when they manage to convince everybody else that those enemies are real, and then those people react against those enemies, they try to say that, well, it was the enemies in the beginning that caused this particular problem to come about. And I guess the issue that I have is when it comes to woke-related stuff, it's hard to find ever, like, what are the particular DEI policies or affirmative action policies that we're talking about. It's always some vague allusion to airlines don't want to hire white pilots, or they lower their standards for black pilots, or these things that tend to not exist when you actually dig into them. Now, I don't know, maybe it is the case that the Royal Air Force actually had a policy of not hiring straight white men.
It did, yeah.
Okay, I'll look into that. I'm curious about that. I have a feeling when I look into it, it's going to be completely untrue, like most of the stuff that you bring it up. But I'll look into it. Maybe it was true. And, if it is, I would say that's not a good thing, that you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. But I guess the issue I have is when you talk about magnitude, I think
We did that stuff here. They did those exact same things. They had hiring, I don't know what you call them, but like it was like a promotional thing where they would try and get women to go in and like join police forces. I saw a lot of that where they were just hiring only women or hiring only minority women. They did that here too. And Stephen Destiny is pretending like he doesn't know that, but I'm sure he knows that. unless he just watches media that doesn't show it, just like we're dealing with the Zionism issue. If your media doesn't show it to you, I guess you don't know. But they have done that quite a bit here.
You said earlier that sometimes people fixate on these issues a little bit too much, but it's because they're such common sense issues. When I look at the United States right now, and I think how many trans people are there, how many people are doing stuff related to trans people, the number of people is incredibly small. It's like 1%. And the idea that that would somehow cause so much of a population to become reactionary that as of 30 minutes ago, I'm pretty sure Iran has tried to bomb like 7 different countries because we have a president who is a madman who is going on a rampage against the entire world insofar as trade and bombs goes. I just can't, in my mind, rationalize how so many of these smart people I'll say in the center like you who say, well, I can obviously identify that this is a problem. Why don't you ever identify any of these super obvious problems on the right or any of the super obvious problems that are reactionary to the other things that were reactionary, especially when the issues in the United States on the right are represented through every single pylon of power that the conservatives have, and on the left, they're in colleges and on Twitter and Facebook and sometimes in AI world on Sora.
Those are young people. Those are the people that are going to grow up and take over the government. That's the problem. Just because they're in college now doesn't mean that they're going to stay there forever. College students usually typically try to graduate so that they could go join the workforce. So now those are brainwashed people who are going into our workforce. That's why everything is so fucked up right now. Safe spaces and shit like that have filtered into corporate world. Like that's what happened with the Bud Light stuff. Like you just get this woke infection in your businesses, in your world, in your culture, in your media, everywhere. We just all have to suck it up and deal with it because, some blue hair that got a job wants us to. It's infuriating. I haven't watched a movie in like years, except to review them. Like I reviewed a couple of movies, but I don't really watch them because there's just propaganda and bullshit, and they're so poorly written. They don't even focus on the story anymore. It's all the shit they want to fucking inject into your life. It's insane. You can't even have a movie about like medieval times. Now they change the characters to black, or they'll change them to gay, or they'll do all these things that just really take you out of the movies. And that's all it's all contributed. It all feeds into the same thing. And wokeism is a scourge. And the problem is, it's a Zionist elite plot. I literally think it's a Zionist / elites plot. That's just the way that they fucking keep us separated. And wokeism is a part of it, just like feminism was a part of it back when my dad was a kid. Like they never end because the elites have their foot on our necks. They control what we do. They control what we think. They are even controlling what we can say in a country with freedom of speech. Sorry for the rant.
This is an article from Sky News. Could you just read out what it says, please?
So I see the AI summary here is applicants.
Read out the headline.
Well, I don't know if there's a headline or if this is a...
Read out the headline.
Okay, so it says applicants seeking to join RAF described as useless white male pilots in bid to hit impossible diversity targets.
I think that it's a lot bigger than we're saying, though, because a lot of these people just... In America, like if you go to other countries, their trans people are very different than they are here. Like they actually look like women there when they try and transition. Here, you just dye your fucking beard blue and say you're a lady now. That's just mental illness. Like that's people just wanting to be trendy or be popular. And that's the problem. It got to be a popular thing. It was the trendy thing. I'm trans. And they let children, they start talking to children about it and brainwash children in the schools to where they think they're trans too. Because that's the cool thing. Look. This guy, this musician I watch, he's trans. I'll be it too. And that's all done on purpose. Lil Nas X wasn't even gay when he first came out. He became gay because that's what they wanted to push. I mean, he probably is gay, but he wasn't going to announce it. He was going to do like a Rock Hudson thing where you got to wait till he dies to find out. I liked it better back then. Go be gay. I don't have an issue with you being gay. Just don't shove it down my throat and don't try and turn my kids into doing that and get them to trick them into cutting their dicks off. That's where it gets fucking scary. Yeah. Movies are terrible. I haven't seen a good scary movie in decades. And I love scary movies. Like I used to live for Halloween. This Halloween, I didn't even watch anything that wasn't made before like 1970. I watch Vincent Price movies at Halloween now. I don't watch anything new. They're terrible. Yeah, I can't get into any TV shows except for the dragons, and it kills me that they're doing the same thing. Like it's just you have to insert this into everything, like it's supposed to be that way, and it's a plot. To me, I see that as brainwashing because that is something that's being put down by the executives and the higher ups to serve an agenda. Like I know a lot of black people, they never had a problem watching like stuff like Lord of the Rings or fucking Game of Thrones. They didn't think that they needed to be, now there are black queens in fucking medieval times and stuff. It's just silly. It takes you out of it. And I'm not, I'm not racist or anything, but like I'm Native American, so technically I guess I can't by the left's dynamic. There's never been a Native American president, so I've never had any institutional power. So I can't be racist technically. But if you want to believe that nonsense. Yeah, I'm glad I get to talk. Whenever I get chatters in here, I get to actually have conversations with y'all, and it makes my clips really good. Like the clips do well whenever I have chatters in here because they get me off, and I try and stay quiet and just let the debate go. This is kind of a boring debate though, because Destiny sucks and Konstantin's not much better. But let's get back to it. I got to get through this. I am getting a Destiny headache though. That's why the weed, because he gives me a headache, a bad headache. Anyone who's had a child knows what this is. This is just someone being a child. I did like Hereditary. I did see that one. That one was okay, but it was kind of just like the ending's always going to be devil worshippers. Like it was like the third or fourth movie where the ending is just, yeah, everything was real and the devil worshippers are going to kill everybody. It was all right though. I like when the guy caught on fire. That was good. Get back to this boring debate.
Just to be clear, just so I can understand.
Thank you.
Is this headline the same as no straight white men were hired? Or
No.
they had a policy of not hiring straight white men? Wait. I'm just so curious. Do you understand the difference between somebody not being hired because they're white? Because I'm not going to sit here. If you're going to ask me, like, do you think there were ever racist people or even against white people? Of course there are. But you understand there's a difference between the entire Air Force having a policy of not hiring straight white men versus, I guess there was an email where some straight white candidates were skipped over. I don't even know if it was.
This is bullshit too. It doesn't matter if you write the policy down, right? I went to school and got a degree in a program called process technology. And the guy came in on the first day of class, and this is what he said. And I was in shock because I looked around and that was like kind of politically incorrect what he was saying. But he looked up to us and he said, "Congratulations, if you're black or a woman, you have a job." And this is in college. This isn't like he can't give us any jobs. He said, they will hire you before you finish this class if you're black or you're a woman. And I was like, that's crazy to say. And then we went on a field trip to go interview at this place. And the questions they asked me in my interview were insane. They asked me about processes they don't even have, that haven't come out yet, like theoretical processes and how they work and what would happen when it happened. I was like, they didn't teach us about this. They said it was theoretical. And so I didn't get the job. And I asked the guy that rode with me, because he rode with me to the interviews. And the question they asked him is, how do you turn the machine on in the morning? That was the hardest question they gave him. How do you turn the machine on that we do everything on in the class? And I was just like, oh, so that's it. And it wasn't like it was just it was a black guy and a white guy doing the interviews. So it's not like they're trying to discriminate against me. This is a policy. They tell them what they want, and then they find a way to make that happen. Right? So I didn't get a job, even though the guy that cheated off me in class did get the job. That's how that works. They don't have to come out and make a policy and put it in writing so somebody gets in trouble. They just tell you this is what you're going to do, and they figure out a way to do that. The questions you get asked in interviews and things like that, that's all what that is.
Because they didn't meet qualifications or not. They used white men to describe them, but they also called them useless. I don't know if it was because they were white or not. You know there's a difference between those two things, right?
So you don't know the story?
Do you know there's a difference between those two things or no?
Yes, I do. Now,
okay, thank you. Okay,
now,
gotcha. Because I was asking for evidence of mine, but you gave me that. So like I said initially, I had a feeling if I looked this up, it wasn't going to be what you presented it as. Yeah, no, go for it.
Okay. So you just denied the existence of this and you questioned it.
I did not deny the existence of that, but go ahead.
Stop talking.
You seem to have a lot of trouble following what I'm saying.
Stop
but that's
talking.
Okay.
Look, the only way to have a conversation is when people talk in turns.
No, it's not. The only way to have a conversation is when two people are making a good faith effort to understand each other. My question was, did the RAF have a policy of not hiring straight white men?
Yes.
You showed me an email that said there were applicants that were rejected that were called useless white male pilots or whatever.
They rejected applicants in a bid to hit diversity targets, which means they discriminated against white men in favor of other groups.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that in this particular email, but that doesn't mean that they were not hiring any straight white men.
I didn't say they were not hiring any straight white men. I said they were discriminating against them in favor of other people to hit diversity targets, which were described by the people who were charged with recruiting them as impossible to hit. In other words, they were deliberately undermining both the efficacy and the fair treatment of people in their hiring policies because of DEI.
Okay, so this...
Do you get it now?
The position you have now, yes. And that
Okay,
sounds more
good.
realistic, that there might have been a hiring policy that favored some groups of people that weren't white over the
Right.
white ones
Right.
to cause them to get hired when it might have been in a blind trial, the white people would have been hired otherwise. Yes.
Right.
Do you understand that that's significantly different than you saying the RAF had a policy of not hiring straight white pilots? First of all, I don't know what straight had to do with... Are you bi? Do you get like a special application on the...
Well, I'm sure you'd want to know the
Yeah, of course, Destiny wants to know
answer
that.
to that question. But
I wouldn't, because I would never become British. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
But
So I think I've just, look, this is why I brought it up, because the idea of a conversation is good faith. But if you question anything that I bring up that you don't know anything about, and then say, well, I don't believe that this happened, and I present you evidence that it did happen, and then you still continue to deny it, I don't see how we can have an actual debate. Now, I never said the RAF hires 0 white pilots. What I said is the policy of discriminating against white men, which has been
Like
rife
arguing
in
with
the
the
rest
daughter.
of society, has created the situation where a lot of
That's exactly what this feels like. That's why I'm getting a headache. I had to argue with my daughter for like 18 years like this. This is exactly what it is, like arguing with a woman, right? Oh. So frustrating.
people rightly, understandably at least, feel antagonistic about it. That was one of the biggest threats with wokeness, and that is one of the biggest challenges where we are. All your points about Trump and all the rest of it, I don't see how it's relevant, and I think we're going to have a section on Trump coming up. I made the point, I think, about trans, that I think trans, I mean, the insanity of some of the things we've been asked to believe, which is like, you know, if you say you're a woman, you automatically become a woman. I think people rightly balk against that because it's ridiculous. Doesn't mean it's the #1 issue. I've never said it's the #1 issue. In fact, I pointed out it's quite a minor issue in terms of the number of people affected by it. But
I'm just curious, in terms of your shows, of all the social issues you talk about, do you think that the trans stuff is at the top 3?
well, I don't think we've talked.
You know, a lot of people aren't murdered, so it only affects a certain amount of people. You know, it doesn't matter to the victim of the victim that's occurring to. That's all that matters. That's what his dumbass isn't understanding. You could do that with anything. Yeah, well, you know, sexual assaults don't happen that much. It's not that big a deal. It's a big deal to the person that's getting stuff put in them they don't want. So that this mentality that it's not a big deal because it doesn't happen to a lot of people, it doesn't matter. To that person, it's a really big deal.
Talked about trans for like a year and a half, maybe 1 or 2 episodes in a year and a half.
Okay,
2
do you feel
years.
like for conservatives in general in the United States, do you think that trans is one of the top issues that they talk about? On all the reform stuff that I looked at, trans was listed on a ton of it. It was in the manifesto.
I'm not a Republican conservative in America, so I don't know what they talk about. It's up to them.
Well, who would you have voted for in the last American election?
Who would I have voted for? Donald Trump, for sure.
Okay, so I don't know. Okay.
Doesn't mean that you're a conservative Republican.
Of course it does. Definitionally so. You're
it
voting
doesn't.
for the conservative Republican candidate.
So if you present me with a small pile of shit and a big pile of shit, and I pick the small pile of shit, you go, oh, you love shit. No.
When they only give you 2 shitty candidates, you just pick the one that's the least shitty. That's why we need 3 parties.
If the vote is between a guy who resembles the furthest right you can be insofar as how they conceptualize the government
And a
being,
guy who has no brain, yeah, I'll go with the guy with a brain.
So
yeah.
Kamala Harris, the person who was a DA in California,
Yeah.
who was Attorney
Yeah.
General,
Was a cackling hyena that no one would ever vote for. She was the least likable candidate they could find. And somehow she's the only other alternative we could vote for because that was the only Zionist available.
in California,
yeah.
who served as vice president, who was a senator in California, versus Donald Trump, who brags about taking and passing 3 cognitive tests in a month.
Yeah.
The dumb person is Kamala Harris there.
Look, I just explained to you that when you make choices between things, it's not because you necessarily love the choice you're making. If you're forced to choose between 2 things, you choose the one that is the lesser evil, effectively.
Sure. I'm just curious. Over the past,
I agree with a lot of Donald Trump's foreign policy.
Sure,
which
of
is
course
one
you do. I know you do.
Of course he does.
You have a conservative view on foreign policy. Over the past 5 years,
So does Destiny.
So you do this thing where you're like, well, I have to choose between 2 things. When you've had this same
That's
choice,
what an election is. It's a choice between 2 things.
well, not in the UK. You can vote between a lot of things. We have 2 parties in the
Yes,
US, but
but
that's
in-
okay. I can always educate you in your political system. It's fine. But
So if he comes to vote in America, he gets to bring the system that he was voting over there with, or does he come here and get 2 choices, Destiny? I'm arguing with my daughter again.
and so my question is, of all these things that you have to choose between, At what case in the last 5 years have you leaned to the left on and would vote for the left on versus the right?
I voted for the left. I voted for a Liberal Democrat at the last election, and it's likely that I will again at the next one. I just told you this.
What about for in terms of like supporting major issues? How many like lib left candidates, I guess, do you guys have on your show, or do you talk to or support?
As many as will come on.
Does that mean zero? Or
No.
how many? Okay, because I know, like, I know Farage has been on a ton. I know you've done a lot of content with Goodwin.
Okay, they're not far left, right? But we've
correct.
also
They're right, yeah.
We've also had
point,
the
yeah.
co-founder of Extinction Rebellion, who's currently in prison for blocking roads, on the show. We've had Aaron Bastani, who's the co-founder of Novara Media, a far-left news organization in this country. We've had a bunch of. I mean, I could go down the list for ages if you want, if that's what you like.
I've seen like the top
He's debating you now, Destiny. So he does deal with a lot of crazy leftists.
10 lists of like the people that you've invited the most on are all generally
We had
right-leaning
comedian
people,
Mark Steele, who's a lefty. We had Deborah Francis White from the
Sure.
Guilty
I'm
Feminist
guessing when you say
podcast.
lefty for these people, they're populist lefties that think that the whole institution is rotted and they
No.
don't support
No.
actively.
No,
so
not
so
at
the
all.
guy you just described, is he like a Labour voter? Would he support Labour? Has he supported Labour?
Which guy? Mark
The
Steele.
one-
He's
yeah.
a lifelong Labour voter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then you get credit for that one, I guess. Okay. I haven't seen every episode of Trigonometry. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, maybe you should stop opining about who we have on then if you haven't seen every episode of Trigonometry.
I don't think I should have to watch every single episode of Trigonometry to have a
You,
rough
you,
idea.
you
of,
should know who we have on the show regularly before you make a
I
judgment.
have a
on it,
decent
yeah.
idea.
No, you don't.
Like,
You've just demonstrated
I
that you
haven't
don't.
seen. I haven't seen you. I demonstrate. I don't know every single person that goes on.
Right.
Like you haven't made
Would
a
you like
Twitter
me to give
video
you more
saying,
lefties?
"Okay, well, call me left wing now." You did make one saying, "Well, fine, I'll be right wing now." Like
So
there's
you-
clearly you lean in a certain direction.
No,
Clearly,
no.
people perceive you. Why do you think everybody perceives you as being right wing then? If you're so centrist or you
Why
lean
does the
left or right?
BBC think I'm right wing?
Why does everybody, on my side at least, everybody perceives you as being right wing?
Because it's convenient for you, as you've demonstrated in the course of this conversation.
And what?
You see how hard Destiny's trying to get him to put that label on so that he can just disqualify anything he says? That's the whole reason for this whole little back and forth.
Way.
I'm about to explain if you just
Okay.
stop talking.
I hope you actually explain.
I will.
Okay, we'll see.
Okay. Can you be quiet while I do?
My mic is down.
Okay, good.
Stop filibustering.
So it's convenient to you in exactly the way that you've demonstrated throughout this conversation, where when I make a good point about anything, you say, you conservatives, and then you pivot to talking about Republicans in America, because it suits you, because then you can argue against things you came here prepared to argue against.
Yeah, typically I was thinking I was going to have to pay a leftist to debate me because they're really difficult to get to come do anything. Like it's very hard. You really much just have to pay them. That's the only way I know to get a debate going, I guess, or an interview or whatever. They like to get paid. They're only doing it for the money, so makes sense.
Instead of arguing with what I'm actually saying.
What is the
That's
point you
why.
feel like I haven't? First of all, I'm pretty sure the debate topics were related to America. Number one.
Were they?
They were. Number one. That's okay. Number two, what is a question that you feel like you've said that I accused you of being a conservative and then I pivoted and I didn't respond to your point?
Every single thing we've discussed.
Name one of them then.
Every single thing we've
So
discussed.
you can't think of a single one. What did I
national
not
id-
respond to for immigration? You didn't bring up a
national-
point. You said a bunch of descriptions. You're like, well, this is true. And then that was
You
it.
keep talking
It took 12 minutes to get you to define woke.
over me, which means we're not actually having a discussion.
Because I'm asking you for an example
And
and you're trying to
giving you
filibuster.
one. I'm about to give you one if you just
Okay,
stop interrupting.
one point that I didn't respond
Can
to.
you just stop interrupting?
Go ahead, give me the point.
Can you just stop interrupting?
That's the
I'm not even
Adderall.
interrupting. I'm waiting for you to
Not
finish.
interrupting
That is so obviously the Adderall. Oh God.
means when I say something, you don't talk after that. Can you do
Ever?
that now?
Okay. Can I fuck up? Okay, go
There
ahead.
you go. On every single thing that we've discussed, immigration, national identity.
Just one thing. You're not having. You're not having.
He just named three. He just named three. He's got to stop saying everything in front of it because Destiny can't pay attention anymore past the first three words.
Having a conversation. I guess I didn't expect you to check out this early, but
He said immigration.
I'm asking: is there a single point that you feel like I haven't responded to with substance, and you're saying everything because you realize you don't have
If
an
you want
answer
to have
for
this
that?
conversation by yourself, you're welcome to.
I
But
feel like I am.
you are, yeah.
I know
You
I
are.
am. Yes,
You
I
are.
know I am. I feel that way. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to the
'Cause
Destiny's debating Adderall right now.
copy paste
You're-
talking points,
you're
and I
not-
can't get an actual answer out of you for anything. I can give you better answers if you're looking for them. Yeah. It's crazy to me that you guys cry about wokeism and snowflakes and all this stuff so much, but like you guys do it all the time. You made the claim that I'm avoiding answering any of your arguments because I'm calling you a conservative. I think you are a conservative and I labels you as such, but I'm not dodging your arguments. There's not a point you brought up that I've refused
This debate really needed a moderator or a mute button.
to address. That's why I asked you for an example of one, and you weren't able to give one. And that's fine if you're not able to give one, but then don't continue to filibuster and make the claim. Just say, okay, well, I guess maybe that was an unfair thing I said, and here's a point that I'm going to make that I would like you to address. That would be the time where you would say, here's a thing that I brought up. You pivoted and you didn't address that particular thing. That would be a thing you could do if I was actually dodging and pivoting from all your points.
Oh my God.
I can't hear any of you. You're going to have to shout louder. Russian agent. What does that mean?
This debate fell off the rails.
So you're saying that because I'm from Russia and I have opinions you don't like, I'm a Russian agent?
Why are we debating the crowd right now? I'm still here.
Is that what
Can
you're
you
saying?
not have a? Can you really not answer my question?
He's desperate for an intelligent conversation, Destiny, and you're not capable.
I'm just not very clear. Is that what you're saying?
Let's not yell out questions from
Oh,
the
there's a
audience.
moderator.
Let's not get into that. Let's try to let the dialectic get back on track here.
Simple question. What do you feel like I haven't addressed?
Every single thing that we've discussed.
See, that you can't listen past that.
Okay, let's run it down. So you said I didn't address immigration, right? My point on immigration is that you guys have
I thought you didn't know. I thought you needed an example. That was an example. So you did hear it. Oh, good.
fear-mongered about immigration, and every single policy that you've tried to enact has
Every
failed.
time you say you guys, you've already lost the argument because you're not arguing with me.
Okay, well, I asked you for a clear stance on whether or not you thought
I was
Brexit
very
was
clear
good
on
on
immigration.
net. You literally said you would not answer the Brexit question. When I asked if you were God, you could push a button. You literally said, "Oh, I don't know. I couldn't do that."
Said immigration. Immigration, not
that's-
Brexit, immigration.
Sure. Well, Brexit was a part of the immigration argument, right?
Not for me.
For the majority of the. Oh my God. I'm sorry. It's okay. What question did you even pose to me with regards to immigration that you felt like I didn't answer? I don't think you even posed a question to me.
What you failed to do, we started this bit of the just listen, okay? Just put the
I'm
microphone
listening
down
right
and
now.
listen.
I'm listening.
Just put the microphone down for a moment and listen.
I'm gonna hold it right here.
Now you carry on. I'm not going to talk if you keep interrupting me. I'm not interested in
I'm
this.
not interrupting
whatever
you.
this is. You are.
I'm literally not. I'm asking you a question. You just refuse to answer. This is the game. How did I do it again? I'm asking you a clear.
He has interrupted almost every time Constant started trying to talk, and now he's saying, "I don't interrupt you. I haven't interrupted you." This is so infuriating.
Question. You can't give me an answer.
I'm not going to talk to you unless you listen to what I'm saying as well as me listening to what you're saying.
I am listening.
Okay, good. So we started this bit of the conversation, right? Talking about the exchange that we just had. That's what we were talking about, right? And you made your points, and I tried to make my points, and you keep interrupting and talking over me, right? I've addressed immigration, and I've addressed every single other thing that you brought up. And the moment I do, what you do is you say, well, you conservatives say this, you conservatives say that, in order that you can then argue with things that I haven't said. And that is exactly what you've done throughout this whole thing. So when you ask me, why do people say that you're a conservative? It's because it's much more convenient for them than addressing the arguments that I'm actually making. And you've demonstrated that throughout this entire discussion. That answers your question.
Okay. What is the argument that you're making with specificity to immigration? What does Konstantin's ideal immigration policy for Great Britain look like? And who in
That's
the
a very
past
good
have
question.
you supported their vision for immigration to the United Kingdom?
Sorry, because I jumped in, which I
have you,
shouldn't have
because
done.
you
Second
interrupted
part.
me. Okay.
Second part.
Yeah. No, who have you supported historically over the past 10 years? Whose idea for immigration, I guess, have you supported policy-wise, politician-wise? Who would you support right now? What is your ideal vision for immigration to the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So my ideal vision for immigration in this country would be something like probably 40 to 50,000 people a year, highly selective, which means that you really have to qualify in terms of your skill set,
No H-1Bs.
ticking all sorts of other cultural compatibility, age, and so all sorts of other things that basically mean you're likely to be a very positive net contribution to the country. You're probably going to have the ability to earn and pay more tax than you receive in benefits over your lifetime. You're unlikely to commit crime. You're unlikely to become a terrorist. You're unlikely to do things that we wouldn't want you to do. It would be highly selective. I think I would definitely prioritize immigration from people from countries, not from countries really, but from people who already speak the language, who maybe have a cultural familiarity. So Hong Kongers are a good example of this, right? These are people who are formerly part of the British Empire, speak the language, they're able to come over, integrate very easily, and make a good contribution. So something like 40 to 50,000 people a year. But again, you know, it's a democratic thing. So if the British people vote to have zero immigration, that's their right. If the British people want to have 300,000 people come a year, that's their right. The part of the problem we've had with immigration in this country.
Wait, can I ask just real
No,
quick?
no,
before you
just
go on
let me
the
just
point?
finish this
Okay.
bit, and then you can ask whatever you want. A part of the problem we've had with immigration in the last 30 years is, despite the fact that people keep voting against mass immigration of the kind that we've had, they keep voting for parties that promise to reduce it in 2010, in 2015, in 2016, in 2017, and 2019, and in 2024. In all of those elections, immigration was a major issue, and the British people overwhelmingly voted against what we have today. Despite that fact, we've actually had the opposite of what they voted for. So I want managed, highly selective, low numbers, high compatibility, and I want it to be in line with the democratic wishes of the British people.
Okay, so then a
Well
statement
said.
and then a question. So I would argue that the reason why people have voted for lower immigration and they haven't gotten the lower immigration is because I don't think people tend to vote for higher or lower immigration. I think that people vote for where they feel problems are, and I feel like people sometimes scapegoat immigrants as a class of people for why these problems exist. So if housing is high, you vote for less immigrants, or if the job market is bad, you vote for less immigrants, or if the NHS wait times are too high, you vote for less immigrants, or if Brexit is losing too much sovereignty, whatever, you vote for less immigrants. I feel like when it comes to these issues, the immigrants become this catch-all scapegoat, which I'm not even saying, and again,
One common feature that goes amongst all the people they're talking about who don't do what they say they're going to do when you vote them in, they're all Zionists. And that's why that's the overarching theme there is that the Zionists want that, because when they bring them here, we fight with them, and now there's an enemy. Now we have a target. Now somebody else for us to be fighting with. And as long as we keep being distracted by these little, created issues, that's what they are. That's what they are. Trump is telling you that he's gonna get rid of all the immigrants, and then as soon as he gets in, well, not if they work in a hotel. I own hotels. Why would I get rid of my workers? or on a farm? No, if they're working on a farm, we'll keep them, and we'll double the HMBs. We'll just bring them in because they bring in 14 relatives. Each person who gets an H-1B passport, I don't know what you even call it, they get to bring 14 family members with them, each one. So that's what they're doing. They will just get a job there, and they're coming to the new world, and they're going to bring 14 family members with them. So that's why it's an issue. Like if they just got to bring 3 or 4, okay, all right, that's fair. 14 family members, like that's 14 people that might have been like shitting in the streets or on the sidewalks. Now they're going to come here and do that. That's why it's becoming a problem. And Trump is all on board with that. He made more HMVs. So that's where the issue is, because Zionists want us fighting with each other. They're going to find ways to get what they want to go through anyway, right? They want the people here. They'll find a way to get them here. And that's what Trump did, because he's a Zionist. And that's the plan. Because as long as we're fighting with each other, we don't notice they've taken over our Congress, our Senate, and our presidency. Well, we're starting to notice. And that's what I'm so happy that people are starting to notice. Oh.
you can label me however you want, but like I'm not a woke person when it comes to immigration. I don't think there's anything wrong with being selective against certain groups of people. But I think that the reason why there's such this pressure for the government, the majority government, to have more immigrants come in is because they know that as much as people might feel a certain type of way about certain types of immigrants, that the collapse of the NHS or the collapse of the education system or the collapse of the local economy is going to be worse than allowing more people to come in and work those jobs. So I guess my question is, and I'm pushing with a degree of specificity because you speak about these issues a lot. When you say selecting for certain values, like what is it? What would that test even look like? When you say selecting for certain values, what are the values that you're selecting for? Number one, and then number two, you mentioned like they have to speak the language and it should be like highly skilled people that can contribute net tax positives to the economy. Let's assume that you met the threshold for all of these things. Why cap it at 30 or 40,000? If they can integrate perfectly, if they speak the language of them, why not have like 100 or 200 or 300,000 of these people coming in?
It's a very good question. For me, I am less attached to the numbers. I just think where culturally Britain is at the moment is that's what the British people would want. For me, it's the numbers are. Joseph Stalin said quantity has a quality all of its own, and I think there's a truth to that, which is once you have very large numbers of people coming over a short period of time, it is disruptive for the reasons we've already discussed, and it also can put pressure on infrastructure. The reason, by the way, we haven't had the policy on mass immigration that the British people voted for isn't that. I mean, I agree with you. Of course, there are some people who scapegoat immigrants to explain the problems that society has. And I don't agree with scapegoating immigrants. That doesn't mean mass immigration is necessarily good. One of the problems with mass immigration is it's effectively been used in Europe to cover up the fact that our economies are not growing. Our economies are shrinking on a per capita basis. We are poorer per capita in this country today than we were before the financial crisis. And the reason we haven't had the policy of controlled immigration that people keep voting for is that bringing in more bodies is the only way politicians can pretend our economy is still growing. That's actually the main reason that this isn't happening.
Okay, so I guess my question is, what are the values?
Plus, politicians want more people there anyway. The bigger your country is, the more it seems like you're an imposing force. So your president, who is the one who's supposed to be keeping the immigrants out, sometimes they actually benefit from having more people here. So that's kind of a bit of a conflict.
Or what are the things that you would select for when you talk about like a values-based?
That's why China still pretends like they have 1 billion people.
Test for people coming to the country.
After a one-child policy they had for like decades. No, you don't.
Like, what are the things that you're talking about? And then also just a comment on, the reason why we're bringing in immigrants is to shore up an economy. I think a lot of that has to do with the boomer generation as well, that you had a lot of people come back from wars, or stay for wars, I guess, for your guys' case, but in the United States we say come back. And then you had this aging population that had a ton of kids, and now these people have all hit a certain age, so you're kind of at this weird demographic age thing, which is why they're bringing in a bunch of younger workers now to kind of fix that issue, because you've got a lot of benefits and, your triple lock pension, whatever else, all these things, Social Security in the United States, yeah.
Well, that's part of it, but the problem is if you're bringing people who are net consumers of tax revenue, then you're not solving that problem, you're making it worse, right? And that's what's been happening in the UK. So when you have mass unskilled or very low-skilled immigration and plus lots of dependents, you're actually bringing in people who are then going on benefits in this country, which I have no idea why it is in this country that we allow foreign citizens to receive benefits.
I'm going to skip forward so we can get to the Trump part. That's the part I was really looking for. I haven't watched this debate.
Net consumers of tax revenues, and you're making that problem worse, which is why I
move on. But Donald Trump, more than any president in my lifetime, tries to circumvent the other branches, not utilize even his Republican majority Congress, chastise and attack his Supreme Court when they don't give him the specific rulings that he wants. And then when he's ruled against, he constantly openly flirts with the idea of either defying the Supreme Court or going around it using any other number of things that they know will also be ruled as unconstitutional. But the problem is the damage is already done.
He follows what the Supreme Court says, right?
I don't think it works that way.
So far.
It would be like saying, like, if somebody doesn't want you to beat you.
I'm not even sure we're going to have an election in 2 years. I'm starting to think that may not happen. I was brainstorming this last night. He has to assume he's going to get some kind of war criminal trials after this, especially depending on if the next person elected is not a Zionist. He knows he's going to jail. He's invading other countries based off of intelligence from Israel that's never been dependable. He's killing like an entire school full of girls in Iran based off of intelligence from Israel. He's got us. And Israel is already going for a war crime. They've already got him for a couple of them, for starvation and a couple of things. So I think that it's very unlikely that he's going to want another election. I think he might just try and keep it. So, hey, if I were him, I might think that same way too, because like he's definitely going to get in some trouble. He's going to test that elites don't go to prison rule that he says exists. He said he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and nothing would happen. So apparently he thinks he's one of the elites that can get away with that kind of shit. So I would not be shocked if there is no election in 2 years. Like you can put that as a little prediction here. I can see that, or at least an attempt to not have one. Like maybe because the war's so bad, we can't change power now, that kind of thing. Just look for it.
You up and they stop beating you up 10 minutes into you asking. I'm saying, well, they eventually listened, right? Well, I mean, the damage is already done.
Well, the damage is not already done in that they can't pursue the policy that they were pursuing prior
Well, the
to that
damage is
point,
already
right?
done, though, right? So, for instance, for tariffs, he's collected some $200+ million of tariffs. He's irreparably harmed our trade relationship with basically every other country, including the United Kingdoms on the planet. We've got people, DACA kids, we just recently found out, I think yesterday, have been deported from the country who were never supposed to be. You've got 2 American citizens that were murdered by questionable, at best, deployments of ICE. You've got the president illegally deployed the National Guard and military to states like California. Like, the damage is already done on that. The court eventually says, hey, you weren't allowed to do that. And Donald Trump goes, oh, cool, I'll find another way to get around this in the future. I don't think, especially an executive, which is the scariest thing because the executive is the guy who's supposed to enforce the laws, him continually skirting or going over these guidelines over and over and over and over and over again in so many historically unique ways, and then saying, well, eventually the court said, hey, that thing that you did 2 years ago that you've already politically and financially benefited from, you weren't allowed to do that. I don't think that's a good system. I feel like it's a dictatorial guy.
Well, look, it's not for me to comment on whether the American system of division of power is good or bad. It is what it is. And what I'm saying is that system seems to me to be standing up pretty well on balance. Doesn't mean that there aren't individual things that you might not agree with. For example, if I don't want to speak about America because it's not my country and it's not from, I don't vote in America, I don't live there, I visit a lot and I like it, but it doesn't mean that I get to sort of say, but if Britain was deporting people to a third country without due process, I would be against that, right? So you can deduce from that how I feel about the United States doing that. I would be totally against that. However, there is a system of checks and balances in the US, which is when the president does something which is, or anyone does something which is found to be illegal, you have to go through the courts. And the question for me is, has America become a dictatorship, which is what I think the important question is, right? Somebody can have all the tendencies they want. The question is America in a position where its leader is able to do whatever he...
Let's see, is America a dictatorship? Not quite yet. We're almost there.
wants and ignore the law? I don't believe that's happening. And is America in a position where its leader will not democratically allow the next freely elected person to take power? Is America in a position where that's not going to happen? I don't think that's the case either. I think power will be handed over peacefully and democratically. And I think the president of the United States is not unrestricted by the law in terms of what he's able to do. So to me, that's a reassuring thing.
Do you think a dictator thing is only bad at the very microsecond it becomes a dictator? Or do you think that all of the steps leading up to it are maybe a cause for concern? Because when we say that there will be free and fair elections, I'm fairly certain that that's the case. But you have the president right now weaponizing his Department of Justice to attack states to look for evidence of fraud in the 2020 election. A case that he's lost in front of courts and to the public and to his own prior administration over and over and over again. Or you've got the president of the United States who's already benefited financially, massively, that the tax department has from collecting revenue from tariffs, which was a thing he knew he never should have done, but he did it, and he's continuing to do it in other ways, and the court will probably rule against him there. Insofar as being able to break the laws or whatever, you have a president who has now been granted immunity from committing all crimes as a result of a bizarro Supreme Court ruling. So in a way, that's a uniquely new thing that Donald Trump has been granted, the ability that once he commits a crime, it can never be questioned or talked about because he's the president of the United States. So, I mean, in some ways, he literally is committing crimes that, or he can commit crimes that he can't be ever held accountable for because of new precedents have been created to protect him as the president of the United States.
Sorry, what were your questions? You made, I think, 3 questions.
So basically, I think that the idea that he's not a dictator yet, because we might have the next free and fair election, when it seems like every part of his administration is through multiple vectors trying to attack free and fair elections, to say, well, as long as the courts, eventually course correct that it's not a dictatorial thing, I just think it's a very naive reading of how democracies can fail.
Well, I don't, sorry. In terms of just say that last bit again.
I think that a guy who is in bad faith attacking all of your democratic norms as the executive is a uniquely scary thing. In the US, we call it a constitutional crisis. That's a uniquely scary thing. And Donald Trump has shown a penchant for a willingness to do this over and over and over again. And just because he's not at the point where I am a dictator, angling himself and doing everything he can to get to that point, I think that interim period is worth criticizing.
I've certainly, I'm not against criticizing any president or prime minister or leader of any country. I think, it was somewhat humorous to some people, but I genuinely believe that there are good and bad sides to every person and every decision and so on. So there's plenty to criticize every leader of every country for. President Trump is no exception to that. There's lots of things I don't agree with him on. There's lots of things I agree with him on, as with every other person. But to me, words are important because they have certain definitions. You don't say that someone is pregnant until they've actually become pregnant. In the same way, I wouldn't call someone a dictator until they are a dictator. That does not mean that you can't say, well, deporting people to a prison in a country to which they've never been is not something I want the leader of my country to do. That is not something I want the leader of my country to do. And that is something that I would want the judicial system of my country to challenge the leader on doing and prevent them from doing in the future. That's my view on it.
Do you think that...
Why would it matter where you deport him to? The whole point is to get him out of the country he's not supposed to be in. If a prison wants to take him, here, take him. He's a criminal. He broke into our country. What's that? What's the problem there? I'm so confused.
Donald Trump is uniquely dictatorial in his search for power in the United States.
I'm not saying Trump's not trying to be a dictator. I just don't think that's example that would really prove that.
And then if your answer to that is no, in what ways are Joe Biden or Barack Obama or Bill Clinton, in what ways did they test the power of the executive in the ways that Donald Trump has? Maybe using the example of the weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Truthfully, I just don't know enough about all the history of the American presidents to be able to make a good comparison between all of them. So I just can't say.
So are you neutral on that, or do you think
it's not that I'm neutral, I'm uninformed about it.
Okay.
I try not
if I were to tell you that Donald Trump has told his Department of Justice to go after individuals using a prosecutor that he said that he truthed out, that this is a thing that no U.S. president in my lifetime has ever done, would you agree that that's like a uniquely bad way for him to weaponize his Department of Justice?
If that is all true, I just don't have enough detail to be able to comment on it properly. I think if you had a Republican here, they probably start talking about the fact that the Democrats tried to put Trump in prison, and their view of that would be that that is equivalent, right?
Sure. There's a fact of the matter, though.
I don't know enough about it to say which one of those cases is true. I try not to comment on things I don't know enough about.
Okay.
But I don't see, I think the conversation we're having here is Donald Trump dictatorial. It's not my impression that he is. And more importantly...
How can it be your impression that he's not if you don't have any concept of historically what presidential actions have been in the United States?
You're totally right. It's my impression, which is why I said it's my impression. It's not my hard-held opinion based on the facts.
What would be a line in the sand for you, or a thing that if you saw Donald Trump do it, you'd be like, ooh, that's a pretty scary...
If he used force to prevent the legal system of the United States from enacting its will, or if he prevented a free and fair election from taking place, or the freely and fairly elected candidate of whoever's next from taking power.
So when Donald Trump, I think he wrote an executive order, when he's talking about utilizing ICE to help the states manage their polling stations, would that be an example of that? Because these are things he's already said he wants to do. In the United States, our individual states all run their own elections. It's a very big deal for all of them. The federal government doesn't intervene in that traditionally, but Donald Trump has been on record now saying multiple times that he would like to have more control over elections in the states.
Well, it depends what those ICE people do. If they're stuffing ballots into voting booths, then yeah, that'd be a problem. If they're preventing people who are not citizens of the country from voting, I think that would actually help election integrity. So it depends what they're actually doing.
So it's not like Donald Trump is going to say we're going here to prevent people from voting, right?
I'm not saying it's about what he'd say. I think it's about what he'd do. So if the ICE agents are there to...
Why would illegal immigrants be at the voting stations anyway? Why are they allowed to vote? I didn't think we let illegal immigrants vote. I don't really see that as dictator. I can't even say it. But that's not a sign of a dictator either. Like, that's just preventing people who aren't supposed to be voting in the first place. Like, why would you want illegal immigrants to go and vote?
Prevent non-citizens from voting. I think that helps election integrity.
They don't even have a mechanism by which
if the ICE agents are there to prevent people from voting who should be voting.
It's not a sign of a dictator to not let illegal immigrants vote and change our elections and take away your vote. Because if an illegal immigrant goes and votes and they vote for the opposite from what you're voting for, they just nullified your vote. That's right. An illegal immigrant who has no right to be here, broke into our country, can nullify your vote. So that's just simple. That's common sense. That's not dictatorship.
voting, or if they're stuffing ballots into voting booths, then that's a different conversation.
If a state explicitly says, we don't want ICE here, we don't want the federal government intervening in our state elections, and Donald Trump says, I'm going to do it anyway for election security,
Yeah.
would you agree that that would be highly problematic and somewhat dictatorial?
Well, it depends on what the reason is.
How about that he dictated a war begin based off of another country? Like, nothing to do with us. He just invaded it because he wanted to, and he didn't have to. There was nothing that would have happened if he didn't. Nothing. Every other president, when they told him that, they were like, well, we're not doing it. And then Israel didn't do anything. So he could have just done the same thing, and the same thing would have happened. But we're fighting a war because the president wants to. And that's not the way, I don't think that's the way America is supposed to happen. Like, I think the president has a lot of things he can do, but I don't think just declaring war is one of them. And that's what this is. This is a war now. Like, we're going to be paying for much higher gas because this president wanted to fight for Israel. They use that, but they can't because they're both Zionists. They don't want to talk about it.
For the state to do that. If the state is doing that to ensure that non-citizens vote, then no. If the state says that for other reasons, then yes.
Well, they're never going to, even if they were doing it to ensure non-citizens vote, they're never going to say that, right?
Right.
And then if Donald Trump is doing it for election security, he's never going to say...
But if that was the rationale for them doing it, then I think you'd want somebody to prevent non-citizens from voting, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but it would be up to the state to enforce that, number one.
What
and
if
number
the state refuses to enforce that because it's in their electoral interest to do that?
I mean, it would be up to the people of that state to vote, to have their state do something different in terms of...
So you have to just let the illegal immigrants vote. That's what Destiny's saying with that, right? That's the whole argument there. You just got to let the states decide. And if the states don't care, then it's okay. So if it's in the state's best interest to see a Democrat president, because it's a mostly Democrat state, why would they? You're proving his point. They're not trying to stop it because they want it to happen that way.
The accountability. This is how our system works.
Okay.
But I mean, like, given that I know that Donald Trump has tried to interfere with elections in the past, why would I even trust his administration to do anything related to election integrity, utilizing federal officers, even if he said that that was his intention? I feel like just seeing him send those agents to any state just in and of itself would be enough to say this is a dictatorial action.
Well, no, your suspicion does not make it dictatorial. But yes, I agree with you. January the 6th was not a good look. And it created a lot of doubts in a lot of people's minds about his intentions when it comes to accepting the results of elections. Democracy depends on losers' consent. And when people lose, they should accept it. But you can also see it from the perspective of someone who might say, well, if you've got a situation where there seems to be, you tell me if this is wrong, but there seems to be some kind of, inexplicable desire to have people vote without ID or to have people vote who may or may not be citizens, that would also make you question election integrity. And I think people are totally entitled to question it and then act accordingly. So
they are, but the process is to vote on your state. Then if you want to have a different requirement for identification at the time you go to vote, you need ID to vote in the United States, just not when you go to the ballot to vote, but to register to vote and everything, you have to show an ID. Which I think it was like that even in the UK up until I think a few years ago.
Then why would it be a problem to have to show it when you go vote? If you have to have it anyway, just bring it with you. How are these even arguments? Like you got it, but now you don't want to use it? Like, you got to bring your ID for everything. They ID me at the bank whenever I try and put my money into it. So why is that a problem to go vote with it? This is bullshit, left versus right horse shit. That's what this is. This has nothing. They're just distractions. Just distractions.
I think you didn't have to show a voter ID.
You still don't.
Oh, you still
so
don't?
So it's a problem, and that's something we need to fix as well.
Yeah, so I'm saying that, like, but in the United States, it'd be up to an individual state to fix what they want.
When I say distractions, I mean they're not wanting to talk about the real issue of Zionism. They're just, this left versus right horse shit is just a distraction.
President coming in and deciding that he wants it to change, and then given his whole history with election conduct, it doesn't seem like it's coming from a place of good faith. That would be a thing it does right now worry me as a U.S. citizen. You've seen him invade Georgia right now with his FBI to seize voter information from 2020. And you've seen he's got an entire cabinet. His whole cabinet has refused to even concede that he lost the 2020 election, which is kind of insane given that we were supposed to be a bastion of democracy and everything, the leader of the free world in terms of liberalism and democracy. So, yeah, I don't know why I would ever be okay with the president overstepping his boundary with federal officers to go into states and enforce stuff and not see that as anything but dictatorial.
Well, as I say, I think you have a legal system that will ensure that the law is ultimately followed, and that's what differs it from a dictatorial system like the one that I lived in for some time, first in the Soviet Union and then in Russia, where you actually have a situation where you cannot remove a person who's in power from power. And so I just insist on defining words in the way that I think is accurate, which is a dictator is someone who cannot be removed from power and who's deliberately using force to violate the law. That to me is what a dictator is. Someone can have dictatorial tendencies. I mean, I might have dictatorial tendencies about parenting, whatever. That doesn't make me a dictator. Right?
No, but if you were the president of the United States, I would be really scared about your dictatorial.
I hope that they look into this war and they find out that they really didn't have any of the intelligence that told them that they were doing nuclear stuff, and we actually look into it, because this is just insane to me. That should be a crime. He should have to go to Iran and answer for the charges, because he attacked those people using America's military apparatus, and you have no reason to back it up. I want him to go to prison for that. That is a war crime, to just attack a nation for no reason that you can't even tell anybody, that we don't even know why the reason is. Nuclear. Yeah, okay, they've been getting nuclear missiles since the 90s. That intelligence is really, really old intelligence. So why are we attacking them now? Because they know they're not getting any more Zionist presidents at this pace. If we can keep this up and just overtake the elites who are keeping us from even having a choice of anyone that's not a Zionist, if we can overcome that, they know they're not going to be able to do this in the future. And that's why they're trying to get this all done right now. That's why it's so urgent, because he may not even have until after midterms. Because I got a feeling he's getting impeached day one, and he may not, it may just remove him from office, and then it's going to go real fast. So sit tight.
No, I
the
agree.
fact that Donald Trump has already embarked on so many horrendous actions that have been contrary to every president
But as
prior
I say,
to him.
I think he is constrained, rightly, like all previous presidents, by the system of checks and balances that you have. The executive will always strain to exceed its authority, and there will be other branches of government whose job it is to restrain them and to use their power for their own agenda. That's just
I
how it
understand what you're
works.
saying, but I mean, with President Trump, it has been unique. It has been a unique stretch in almost every single realm regarding executive authority. So,
But he is following the law
No,
once
he's
the
not.
judgment. Which laws is he not following? Once the Supreme Court says this is a thing you're not allowed to do, he still carries on doing that thing?
No, but if they say that
Well,
it's not a
that's
thing
what
that
I'm
he's allowed to
saying.
do, then he broke the law up to that point.
Okay, but the moment, well, but if I don't know, if I'm doing something and I don't know that whether I'm allowed to do it or not,
Yeah,
right?
what would
And
happen to you?
And someone comes in and says, you're not allowed to do this, and I stop doing it, isn't that me, in fact, the system working as intended?
No, because
No, you were still breaking the law. Like, ignorance of the law is not an excuse for breaking it. You still go to jail. Oh, I didn't know we couldn't drunk drive around here. Yeah, you're still going.
what would happen to you if you did that?
I would go,
Exactly. There'd be accountability. You'd go to jail probably, right? If you were
Or
doing
pay
something
a
illegal.
fine or whatever,
Yeah,
right.
exactly. There'd be a punishment.
Right.
For the executive, there is none.
well, of course, because the executive is not a person. You can't put the executive in prison, right?
Well, because they're the people that put people in prison.
No, because it's about policy. It's about policy implementation, not personal behavior, right? That's the difference.
I mean, for Donald Trump, it is personal behavior, but I'm just saying that the idea that when you say the law is working as intended, if I were out setting buildings on fire and then a police officer.
Are you going to tell me you're going to let him get away with, oh, I didn't know I wasn't supposed to kill children in another country when I'm president? Yeah, that's not a good excuse. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to target all those children.
Came up to me and said,
on.
sir, we evaluated the last 20 arsons you did, and we've decided they were all illegal. And I say, oh, okay, I'm going to stop setting buildings on fire.
Yeah.
You would never describe me as somebody who is following the law because once I was told I wasn't allowed to do a
Yeah,
thing.
that's fair. But this
Yeah.
is where the analogy between the person and the executive breaks down, right? Because the president is testing where the law is and finding out what he is and isn't allowed to.
And if you go too far, you broke the law. And that means you have to pay the consequences. He's not a woman. He's got to pay his consequences. Elites and women, the only people that never pay consequences.
do. And the Supreme Court's job is to adjudicate on whether what he's doing is compliant with the law or not.
I think
It's
there
not
are
like
worlds-
he knows that you're not supposed to set a building on fire and then goes and sets it on fire. He is questioning the way that the system should work. He implements a policy. The Supreme Court says you're not supposed to do this. He stops doing it.
I think
That's
there's
the
a
system
world
working
where
as
that
intended.
can be the case, and I think
Right.
there are times where a president has tested where they feel. When Biden tried to do mass student loan forgiveness, there was a student education bill that gave the president pretty broad powers to forgive student loans based on like disaster stuff, and he thought for COVID he could. And I think that there is an argument on both sides where it's like, well, that would be way too much for Congress to grant without like more specific legislation, or yeah, I think he actually was allowed that power. I think you could have a reasonable disagreement there in terms of what the president could do. For Donald Trump, the idea that I could tariff the entire planet without congressional approval ever, or that I can go to war with whatever country I want to without approving anything with the Senate, or that I could tell my Department of Justice to target individuals with what we all know are essentially fabricated indictments about mortgage fraud because they're all political adversaries of his. With issue after that, I can invoke the Alien Enemies Act so that I can more quickly deport Venezuelans because I'm trying to claim that Venezuela is actively invading the United States of America because they have gangs there. I don't think that these are good faith tests of the law. There's just a guy breaking the law and then giving some pretextual basis for why they were allowed to do the thing that they did.
We have 15 minutes left, gentlemen, wherever you guys want to go.
Fine.
I just wanted to get the Trump one, to get to that one. I don't even know what this last one is. I didn't watch this debate. It's just frustrating because they're not even talking about the real issue. And this is only a month old. Like, this is from March 2nd. So they should absolutely have been talking about the Zionism issue a lot more than they're talking about this. But they're trying to keep it to stay left versus right. That's the only way they can do this. And I'm going to give you another test here. You can see the people who are just trying to serve agendas. You watch YouTube. Y'all are all YouTube people. Y'all watch YouTube frequently, I'm imagining. Scroll around. See the people who are in the news who are not talking about Gabriela Saldana, right? I told y'all about it earlier. If they're not talking about that, there's a reason they're not talking about that, because they don't want that information out there. Yeah, some big names are bringing it up. I saw Jimmy Dore had a special on. I saw a couple people before I started the show. But if they're not doing that, there's a reason they're not doing that, because they don't want that out there. They don't want you knowing that people in America are going to jail for talking and just saying the things they think, telling jokes. This girl told a joke. It wasn't a funny joke, so maybe she should go to jail for that. But women aren't funny, so it's not her fault. But yeah, that statement, Netanyahu, if you can hear me, drop some bonbons for us capstone students. Does that sound like a felony statement to you? I want you to think about that. She probably didn't even know that that was offensive. I don't know that's offensive. Like bonbons? Like, what the fuck is she even talking about? Told you women aren't funny. But that's not something she should go to jail for. Not in America. Yeah, if you're in Israel, maybe you could do that, I guess, but not here. That's the problem. And I was hoping they would be talking about it. I didn't get to watch this one beforehand because the one I was going to do today, I had some AI issues. But that's why I did this one. I thought it would be more relevant to the real issues, but this is the issue here. They want to make it stay left versus right, and that's all they want to talk about. Zionism didn't come up hardly at all in this debate. And that should be the biggest thing on everyone's mind, considering we're losing our freedom of speech. I think that's a really serious issue. And if we don't do anything about it, then I guess we didn't deserve to have it. Because we need to stand up on this. This is a very important thing. And I want to see rallies about this. This girl needs to have the biggest GoFundMe ever. But I bet because GoFundMe is ran by Israel, I bet they won't even let her set up a GoFundMe. Can't do it because she's a felon. That's how they get you. So keep your eyes open. And like I said, go look around. See who's not talking about this. And just kind of think to yourself, why aren't they mentioning this? Is this not a big story? Is this not important that we're losing our freedom of speech in America?
Let 'em burn it out. Sell 'em to the richest buyer. They won't
Anyway,
let
Friday's show is going to be a late show. I'm going to be trying to do an evening show so I can get some different dynamics in here. But I want to thank the chatters. Y'all made this boring debate much more interesting and gave me some good clips. So I appreciate you very much. And if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. I'm going to let my co-host take me out because y'all love it when you get to see his little ass. Watch. Close the show, Ozzy. Look at that. Look at that. Peace. I'll see y'all Friday.
This is bigger than ourselves. We won't